nurse became alarmed when a father refused to let doctors examine his 8-year-old daughter. When they distracted him, the girl quickly showed them something that left them speechless. The rain tapped a gentle rhythm against the windows of Mercy General Hospital's pediatric ward, creating a soothing counterpoint to the controlled chaos within. Eleanor Palmer paused at the nurse's station, tucking a strand of silver-streaked brown hair behind her ear as she studied the patient roster for the day. 25 years of nursing had taught her to savor these quiet moments before the floodgates opened. "Morning, Ellie," called Zach Taylor, the newest nurse on their team, his cheerful energy still untarnished by the weight of the profession. At 32 years her junior, he approached each shift with an enthusiasm that Eleanor sometimes envied. "Ready for another thrilling Tuesday?" "As ready as ever," she replied, offering him a warm smile. Her eyes returned to the clipboard, scanning the list of names. "Looks like a full schedule. When isn't it?" Zach said, leaning against the counter. "Dr. Bennett asked me to tell you he's running 15 minutes behind. Some issue with the Wilson twins." Eleanor nodded, making a mental note. The Wilson twins were regulars, two rambunctious 5-year-olds with chronic asthma and a talent for creating havoc in the waiting room. "Thanks for the heads up. I'll adjust the schedule." She continued reviewing the day's patients, her practiced eye-catching details in the brief notes. A 3-year-old with recurring ear infections, a teenager with diabetes management issues, a 6-month-old with a high fever, and then room 4, Lily Morgan, age 8, presenting with a persistent cough and low-grade fever for 2 weeks. Father reports previous antibiotics from GP ineffective. Something about the final notation caught Eleanor's attention. Perhaps it was the precision of the time frame. Exactly 2 weeks. Not about or almost 2 weeks. Perhaps it was the mention of antibiotics that hadn't worked, suggesting either a viral infection or something else. After decades in pediatric care, Eleanor had developed an instinct about these things, though she couldn't always articulate why certain cases raised tiny red flags in her mind. "I'll take the Morgan girl in 4, she told Olivia Watson, the ward receptionist who was juggling phone calls and computer entries with practiced efficiency. "Chart's already been pulled," Olivia replied without looking up from her monitor. "Father seems rather anxious. 3rd hospital they've tried this month, according to the intake form." Another small flag raised itself in Eleanor's mind. "3rd?" she echoed. "Did he say why they changed doctors?" Olivia shrugged. "Something about not being satisfied with the diagnosis. You know the type, medical Googlers who think they know better than professionals." Eleanor did indeed know the type, but she also knew that sometimes parental instinct was worth listening to. She picked up Lily Morgan's preliminary chart and scanned it quickly. The notes were detailed, perhaps too detailed for a simple cough. The father had provided an extensive medical history, including allergies to 2 specific antibiotics and a note about a possible connective tissue disorder currently under investigation. Carrying the chart with her, Eleanor made her way down the corridor, her comfortable shoes squeaking slightly against the recently mopped floor. She paused outside room 4, taking a moment to center herself before knocking gently and entering. The first thing she noticed was the girl's eyes, large, intelligent, and watchful, set in a pale face framed by dark blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Lily Morgan sat perfectly still on the examination table, hands folded in her lap, wearing a blue dress with white tights that looked more appropriate for a school picture than a hospital visit. Beside her, a man in his mid-40s stood rather than sat in the available chair. He was well-dressed in a charcoal suit that suggested a professional interrupted in his workday, his posture tense despite his attempt at a relaxed smile. "Good morning," Eleanor said warmly, directing her greeting primarily to Lily. "I'm Nurse Palmer, but you can call me Eleanor if you like." Before Lily could respond, her father stepped forward, hand extended. "Richard Morgan, thank you for seeing us today. Lily's been struggling with this cough for 2 weeks now, and our GP's prescription hasn't touched it. I'm getting concerned about possible pneumonia." Eleanor shook his hand, firm grip, slightly damp palm, and then turned her attention back to the child. "Hello, Lily. Not feeling too well, are you, love?" The girl's eyes darted briefly to her father before returning to Eleanor. "My chest hurts when I cough," she said, her voice small but clear. "She's been up 3 nights in a row," Richard added quickly, coughing until she nearly vomits. "The school nurse called me yesterday, concerned about her fatigue." Eleanor nodded, noting how Richard stood positioned between her and Lily, his body language suggesting protection, but somehow feeling more like a barrier. Another small flag. "Well, let's see what we can find out," she said, moving to wash her hands at the small sink. "Lily, can you tell me more about how you're feeling? Apart from the cough, are you having any other problems?" Again, that quick glance at her father. "I'm tired a lot, and sometimes it's hard to take a deep breath." "She's also had a low fever," Richard interjected. "Between 99 and 100 degrees most days. I've been tracking it morning and night." He produced a small notebook from his jacket pocket, flipping it open to reveal meticulous records of temperature readings, medication times, and coughing episodes. Eleanor accepted the notebook, impressed despite herself at the level of detail. Most parents couldn't provide such precise information. As she reviewed the notes, she asked, "You mentioned this is the 3rd hospital you visited. What did the other doctors tell you?" Richard's jaw tightened slightly. The first said it was just a viral infection that needed to run its course. The second prescribed antibiotics that didn't work. Neither took the time to really examine her or consider her history of respiratory issues. "I see," Eleanor said neutrally. "And you mentioned a connective tissue disorder in the intake form?" "Under investigation," Richard clarified quickly. "Her mother had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Lily shows some symptoms, easy bruising, joint flexibility. We're waiting on genetic testing." Eleanor made a note in the chart. Ehlers-Danlos could explain a number of things, including potential bruising, though the specific mention of this rare condition struck her as unusual. "Lily, I'm going to take your temperature and listen to your chest now, okay?" Eleanor approached the girl, noting how she sat perfectly still, almost too still for an 8-year-old. Most children fidgeted, swung their legs, touched things they shouldn't. Lily remained motionless, her only movement the rise and fall of her chest with each shallow breath. As Eleanor placed the thermometer in Lily's ear, Richard moved closer, watching the procedure with unusual intensity. "She has sensitive ears," he commented. "The right one in particular." Eleanor nodded but focused on Lily's face, watching for signs of discomfort. The girl didn't flinch. 99.3, Eleanor announced after the thermometer beeped. "Not too high, but certainly above normal." She proceeded to listen to Lily's lungs, asking her to take deep breaths. There was indeed congestion, a crackling sound in the lower right lung that suggested the possibility of a developing infection. "Can you cough for me, Lily?" she asked gently. The girl produced a wet, rattling cough that confirmed Eleanor's suspicion that this wasn't merely a lingering cold. "I'd like to check your throat as well, sweetheart," Eleanor said, reaching for a tongue depressor. "Can you open wide for me?" As Lily complied, Eleanor noticed Richard inch even closer, his eyes fixed on the examination. Most parents watched medical examinations with concern, but there was something different in his gaze, a vigilance that felt excessive. "Her lymph nodes have been swollen too," Richard said as Eleanor gently palpated Lily's neck, particularly on the right side. "Yes, I can feel that," Eleanor confirmed, though she wondered how Richard knew to check for swollen lymph nodes. "Lily, does it hurt when I touch here?" The girl gave a small nod, and Eleanor noticed her hands tightening in her lap. "We'll need to do a few more tests," Eleanor explained, stepping back and making notes in the chart. "Dr. Bennett will want to see her, and we should probably get a chest X-ray to rule out pneumonia." At the mention of additional tests, Richard's posture changed subtly. "Is that really necessary? We were hoping for a diagnosis and treatment plan today." Lily gets anxious about medical tests. Eleanor looked at Lily, whose expression didn't particularly suggest anxiety. If anything, she seemed resigned rather than fearful. "It's standard procedure with respiratory symptoms this persistent," Eleanor explained, "especially with the fever and the sounds I'm hearing in her lungs." Richard glanced at his watch. How long will all this take? I have meetings this afternoon I can't reschedule. Probably a couple of hours, depending on how busy radiology is, Eleanor answered honestly. You're welcome to use our family room if you need to make calls. No, Richard said quickly, then softened his tone. No, that won't be necessary. I'll stay with Lily. She gets nervous in hospitals. Eleanor noticed that Lily herself had said nothing about being nervous. In fact, the girl's expression remained largely unreadable, though her eyes continued to track every movement in the room. I understand, Eleanor said, though something about the dynamic felt increasingly off. Dr. Bennett will be in shortly. He's running a bit behind schedule this morning. Fine, Richard replied, his tone suggesting it was anything but. We'll wait. As Eleanor turned to leave, she caught Lily's eye and offered a warm smile. The girl didn't quite smile back, but something in her gaze held Eleanor's attention for a moment longer than usual, a watchfulness, an assessment, as though she was making some complex calculation. Outside the examination room, Eleanor paused to complete her notes, adding observations about the father-daughter dynamic that weren't strictly medical but might be relevant. As she wrote, Dr. Thomas Bennett approached, his tall frame and prematurely gray hair making him easy to spot in the busy corridor. Morning, Eleanor, he greeted her, suppressing a yawn. The Wilson twins nearly sent me into early retirement today. So I heard, she replied with a sympathetic smile. Listen, Thomas, I've got a case I'd like you to look at carefully. 8-year-old with respiratory symptoms, possible pneumonia, but, he prompted when she hesitated. Something doesn't feel right about the family dynamic. Father is very controlling of the interaction, answers for the child, seems overly concerned about additional testing. Third hospital they've tried this month. Dr. Bennett raised an eyebrow. Doctor shopping? Possibly. He's also mentioned an undiagnosed connective tissue disorder, Ehlers-Danlos. That's specific for a parent to suggest, Dr. Bennett noted, frowning slightly. Exactly. Could be nothing, just an anxious, well-informed father. But my instincts are pinging. Dr. Bennett had learned over the years to trust Eleanor's instincts. I'll take a closer look, he promised, accepting the chart from her. Room 4, you said? Eleanor nodded, watching as he moved down the hallway. She couldn't quite shake the image of Lily's watchful eyes, nor the feeling that there was more to this case than a persistent cough. The morning progressed with the usual parade of minor emergencies and routine checkups. Eleanor assisted with a terrified 4-year-old needing stitches, calmed a teenage asthmatic having a panic attack that was worsening his breathing, and helped Zach manage the Wilson twins, who had returned for a follow-up and were currently treating the waiting room as their personal playground. Through it all, her thoughts repeatedly returned to room 4. Dr. Bennett had been in with the Morgans for nearly 30 minutes, longer than a standard examination would require. She was restocking supplies at the nurse's station when he finally emerged, his expression thoughtful as he approached her. What did you make of them? She asked quietly, stepping away from where they might be overheard. Dr. Bennett ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized as a sign of uncertainty. Medically, she does have an infection brewing. Lower right lobe shows significant congestion. I've ordered a chest X-ray and blood work. And the father? Knowledgeable. Maybe too knowledgeable. He asked about specific antibiotics before I even confirmed bacterial infection, questioned my recommendation for blood work, and insisted on staying with Lily for all procedures. Did he agree to the tests? Reluctantly, Dr. Bennett confirmed. He wanted to know exact timing, insisted we work around his schedule. When I suggested Lily might be more comfortable with just female staff present for some parts of the examination, he was adamant about staying. Eleanor frowned. That's not uncommon with some parents, but combined with everything else. I know, Dr. Bennett said, lowering his voice further. There's something else. When I asked Lily to remove her cardigan for the chest exam, her father jumped in and helped her, almost controlling the process. I noticed some bruising on her upper arms, small, finger-shaped marks that could be consistent with grabbing. Eleanor felt her chest tighten. Did you ask about them? Yes. Richard immediately explained that it's due to the suspected Ehlers-Danlos. Said she bruises from the slightest pressure. When I tried to ask Lily directly, she just nodded agreement. They shared a look of professional concern, both aware of the delicate territory they were entering. False accusations could destroy relationships with patients and families, but failure to report legitimate concerns could leave a child in danger. I've scheduled the blood work and X-ray, Dr. Bennett continued. That will give us more time to observe them and gather information. If our concerns persist, we'll need to consider involving social services. Eleanor nodded. I'll assist with the blood draw. Sometimes children say things when their parents are distracted. Good idea. Oh, and Eleanor? Document everything meticulously, just in case. The warning was unnecessary. Eleanor had learned that lesson early in her career, but she appreciated his caution. Always do, she assured him. As Dr. Bennett moved on to his next patient, Eleanor found herself standing outside room 4 again, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had been in this position before, sensing that something was wrong but unable to articulate a specific accusation. Years ago, she had hesitated, doubting her instincts about a family that seemed perfect on the surface. She later learned that the child had suffered 3 more months of abuse before someone else finally reported their concerns. Eleanor had vowed never to let that happen again, never to let professional politeness override her duty to protect the vulnerable. Taking a deep breath, she knocked and re-entered room 4. Richard was on his phone, speaking in hushed but firm tones about rescheduling a meeting. Lily sat in the same position as before, though she had removed her cardigan. Now wearing just a short-sleeved dress, her thin arms were more visible, and Eleanor could indeed see faint bruising around her upper right arm. Marks that did appear consistent with an adult's grip. We're ready for Lily's blood work now, Eleanor announced after Richard ended his call. And radiology can take her for the chest X-ray right after. Richard frowned, checking his watch again. Both are absolutely necessary? Yes, Eleanor said firmly. Dr. Bennett explained the reasoning, I believe. He did, but, Richard began, then stopped himself, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Fine, let's get it over with quickly. Lily, remember what we discussed about blood tests? You'll be brave, right? Lily nodded silently, sliding off the examination table. Eleanor noticed how carefully she moved, as though afraid of making any sudden motions. The phlebotomy room is just down the hall, Eleanor explained, leading the way. We have some lovely pictures on the ceiling to look at during the draw. Do you have a favorite animal, Lily? When the girl hesitated, Richard answered, She likes horses. She has riding lessons on Saturdays. Eleanor kept her focus on Lily. Is that right? Do you enjoy riding? Lily gave a small nod. The horses are nice, she said softly, the first unprompted comment Eleanor had heard from her. In the phlebotomy room, Eleanor prepared the equipment while explaining each step to Lily. The girl watched with that same intense focus, showing neither fear nor curiosity, just careful observation. Mr. Morgan, would you mind signing these consent forms while I get Lily settled? Eleanor asked, handing Richard a clipboard with several papers requiring signatures. As he took the clipboard, Eleanor positioned Lily in the chair, gently rolling up her sleeve. This will just pinch for a moment, she said reassuringly. Would you like to count to 3 with me before we start? Lily nodded, and as they counted together, Eleanor carefully inserted the needle. The girl didn't flinch, another unusual response for a child her age. You're very brave, Eleanor commented as the blood began flowing into the collection tube. Some adults aren't this calm with needles. Lily's eyes met hers. I've had lots of tests, she said quietly. Because of your cough? And other things. Lily's gaze drifted to where her father stood with his back to them, focused on the paperwork. In that brief moment, something changed in her expression. A flicker of something that might have been fear or might have been a silent plea. Eleanor felt her professional instincts sharpen. What other things, sweetheart? She asked, keeping her tone conversational as she changed collection tubes. Lily's eyes darted to her father again. I fall a lot, she whispered. Dad says I'm clumsy. Richard turned at that moment, approaching them with the completed forms. All finished with these, he announced, his gaze immediately going to the blood being drawn. How much more do you need? That seems like a lot for her size. Just one more tube, Eleanor assured him. Standard protocol for the tests Dr. Bennett ordered. Lily's doing wonderfully. She knows how to behave during medical procedures, Richard said, placing a hand on Lily's shoulder. Eleanor didn't miss how the girl tensed slightly at his touch. When the blood draw was complete, Eleanor placed a colorful plaster over the puncture site. Perfect. Now we'll head to radiology for that chest x-ray. It's just down on the first floor. As they walked, Eleanor observed how Richard kept a hand on Lily's back, guiding her movements in a way that seemed controlling rather than supportive. The girl moved carefully, taking measured steps as though walking through a minefield. In the elevator, Eleanor tried again to engage directly with Lily. Do you like school, Lily? What's your favorite subject? Lily's an excellent student, Richard interjected. Top marks in mathematics and reading. Her teacher says she's above grade level in most subjects. That's impressive, Eleanor said, still looking at Lily. But what do you enjoy most? After a glance at her father, Lily answered, I like reading and art. Art was her mother's talent, Richard added, a shadow crossing his face. Lily inherited her creative streak. The elevator doors opened, preventing further conversation. As they approached the radiology department, Eleanor explained the x-ray procedure to Lily. You'll need to change into a hospital gown for the x-ray. There's a changing room right there. Would you like me to help you? Before Lily could answer, Richard said firmly, I'll help her. She's shy with strangers. Another red flag waved in Eleanor's mind. An 8-year-old girl might indeed be shy, but Richard's consistent interference with normal hospital protocol was becoming a pattern she couldn't ignore. Actually, Mr. Morgan, Eleanor said, adopting her most professional tone, hospital policy requires a female staff member to assist young girls with changing. It's a standard safeguarding measure. Richard's expression hardened. I'm her father. I understand, sir. It's not a personal reflection on you. It's our policy for all patients. Eleanor held her ground, meeting his gaze steadily. I'll be very quick, and you can wait right outside the door. For a moment, tension crackled between them. Then Richard's phone rang, providing a timely distraction. He checked the screen and frowned. I need to take this. It's my office. He turned to Lily. I'll be right outside. Remember what we discussed about hospital visits. As he stepped away to answer the call, Eleanor gently guided Lily into the changing room and closed the door. Let's get you ready for your x-ray, she said warmly. Can you lift your arms for me? I'll help you with your dress. Lily complied silently, and as Eleanor carefully lifted the dress over her head, she had to suppress a gasp. The bruising visible earlier on Lily's arms extended across her back and ribcage, mottled patches of yellow and purple in various stages of healing. Some were clearly older, fading to green at the edges, while others appeared fresh. Maintaining her professional composure despite her shock, Eleanor helped Lily into the hospital gown. Lily, she said gently, crouching to meet the girl's eyes. Can you tell me how you got these bruises? Lily's gaze darted to the door, then back to Eleanor. I fall a lot, she repeated, the same explanation she'd given earlier, but her voice trembled slightly. It looks painful, Eleanor observed, careful not to lead the questioning. Does anyone help you when you fall? A barely perceptible shake of the head. I have to be more careful. Dad says I need to pay attention. The door handle rattled then, and Richard's voice came through. Is everything all right in there? The radiologist is waiting. Just finishing up, Eleanor called back, her eyes still on Lily's face. The girl's expression had closed off again, the brief vulnerability gone. As they exited the changing room, Richard immediately took up his position beside Lily. That took longer than necessary, he commented, his tone carrying an edge. Buttons can be tricky, Eleanor replied smoothly. Now, Lily will need to go into the X-ray room alone, but you can watch through the viewing window here. Alone? Richard frowned. She gets anxious about medical equipment. I'll be fine, Dad, Lily said, the first time she had directly contradicted him. Something in her voice, a hint of determination perhaps, caught Eleanor's attention. Richard seemed surprised by this assertion. Well, if you're sure, I'll be watching right here. Eleanor guided Lily into the X-ray room, introducing her to the radiologist, James, who had a kind face and a gentle manner perfect for pediatric patients. I just need you to stand very still against this plate, James explained, positioning Lily carefully. Take a deep breath when I tell you, and hold it for just a moment. It doesn't hurt at all. It's just like having your picture taken. Through the viewing window, Eleanor could see Richard watching intently, his phone now pressed to his ear again, apparently continuing his business call while keeping his eyes fixed on the procedure. As James stepped behind the protective screen to take the X-ray, Eleanor moved closer to Lily. You're doing brilliantly, she whispered. Is there anything you want to tell me? Anything at all? For a brief moment, Lily's carefully maintained composure wavered. Her lower lip trembled slightly, and she whispered back, He gets angry when I'm sick. Before Eleanor could respond, James called out, Ready for the X-ray. Big breath in, Lily, and hold it. The moment passed. Lily followed instructions perfectly, and within minutes the X-ray was complete. Eleanor helped her down from the platform, acutely aware of Richard's gaze following their every move through the window. All done. You can change back into your clothes now, Eleanor said, leading Lily back toward the changing room. I'll help you again. This time, Richard intercepted them before they reached the door. That won't be necessary. We've taken up enough of your time already. I can help her. Eleanor began to protest, but Richard had already ushered Lily into the changing room, closing the door firmly behind them. Through the door, Eleanor heard him speaking to Lily in a low, intense voice, though she couldn't make out the words. She stepped back, troubled by the escalating signs, but aware that she needed to proceed carefully. Confronting Richard directly without sufficient evidence could potentially make the situation worse for Lily if there was indeed abuse occurring. When they emerged, Lily was once again dressed in her blue dress and cardigan, her expression even more closed off than before. Richard had a hand firmly on her shoulder, his smile not reaching his eyes as he addressed Eleanor. When will we have the results? We've been here for nearly 3 hours already. Dr. Bennett will review the X-ray and blood work as soon as they're ready, Eleanor explained. Would you like to wait in the cafeteria? It might be more comfortable, and Lily could get something to eat. We brought snacks, Richard said dismissively. We'll wait in the examination room. As they made their way back to the pediatric ward, Eleanor's mind was racing. The bruising on Lily's body was extensive, far more than would be expected from normal childhood accidents, even allowing for easier bruising if she did have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Combined with Lily's whispered comment about her father's anger and his controlling behavior, Eleanor felt increasingly certain that her concerns were justified. Back at the nurse's station, she pulled Dr. Bennett aside. We need to talk, she said quietly. Privately. In his office, with the door closed, Eleanor detailed what she had observed. The extensive bruising across Lily's torso and back, the girl's carefully guarded behavior, and her comment about her father's anger when she was ill. Dr. Bennett listened intently, his expression growing more troubled. That's enough to justify a safeguarding referral, he concluded. I'll contact Melissa Jones in social services. In the meantime, we need to find a way to separate Richard from Lily briefly. Get her talking without his presence. He's watching her like a hawk, Eleanor said. Wouldn't leave her alone even for the X-ray until she spoke up. Then we'll need to create a diversion, Dr. Bennett decided. Something that requires his attention but doesn't raise his suspicions. They formulated a plan. Dr. Bennett would discuss the preliminary blood results with Richard, deliberately bringing up complex medical terminology that would require focused attention. Meanwhile, Eleanor would use the opportunity to speak with Lily alone. As they returned to the ward, Eleanor spotted the hospital security officer, James Cooper, making his routine rounds. She caught his eye, giving him a subtle signal they had established years ago for potentially volatile situations. He nodded imperceptibly, altering his path to position himself casually near room 4. Dr. Bennett entered the room first, Eleanor following behind. Richard was pacing near the window while Lily sat on the examination table, her posture rigid and eyes downcast. "Mr. Morgan," Dr. Bennett began, "we have some preliminary results I'd like to discuss with you. The blood work shows elevated white cell counts consistent with infection, and I've had a first look at the X-ray." Richard stopped pacing. "So I was right about the pneumonia? There is an infiltrate in the lower right lobe that suggests pneumonia, yes. However, there are some additional findings I'd like to discuss in detail. I've brought the lab results here." Dr. Bennett led Richard to the small desk in the corner, strategically positioning himself so that Richard's back was to Lily. He spread out papers covered in numbers and medical terminology, launching into a detailed explanation of various markers and values. Eleanor moved casually to Lily's side, keeping her voice very low. "Lily, sweetheart, I noticed those bruises on your back. I'm concerned about you. Can you tell me how they really happened?" Lily's eyes darted to her father, who was now engrossed in the medical discussion, pointing at numbers on the page and asking questions. "He'll know if I tell," she whispered, barely audible. "We can protect you," Eleanor promised. "But I need to know the truth." Lily's hands twisted in her lap, her knuckles white with tension. "Sometimes he gets mad," she finally whispered, "when I'm sick or when I do things wrong. He says it's for my own good, to make me stronger." Eleanor felt a cold wave of certainty settle over her. "Does he hit you often?" A tiny nod. "More since Mum died. He says I remind him of her, and then he gets angry all over again." "Lily, what you're describing isn't right," Eleanor said, her voice gentle but firm. "No one should hurt you no matter what. Would you like us to help make it stop?" For the first time, a flash of hope appeared in Lily's eyes. She gave another small nod. "But he'll be so angry." "He won't be able to hurt you anymore," Eleanor promised. "We have ways to keep you safe." Across the room, Richard's voice was rising slightly as he questioned Dr. Bennett's interpretation of the blood results. Eleanor knew their window of opportunity was closing. "Lily, I'm going to talk to some people who can help you," she explained quickly. "For now, just know that you're not alone anymore. You've been very brave." The girl's eyes filled with tears that she quickly blinked away as Richard turned from the desk, clearly dissatisfied with Dr. Bennett's explanations. "This doesn't make sense," he was saying. "If it's bacterial pneumonia, why are you hesitating to prescribe antibiotics? We've wasted an entire day here." "As I was explaining, Mr. Morgan, the pattern of infiltrates on the X-ray is somewhat atypical," Dr. Bennett replied calmly. "I'd like to consult with a colleague before finalizing treatment. Additionally, Lily's symptoms suggest this has been developing for longer than the 2 weeks you've reported." Richard's eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting I'm lying about my daughter's condition?" "Not at all," Dr. Bennett assured him. "But sometimes children don't report all their symptoms, or they develop so gradually that parents don't notice the timeline exactly." Eleanor watched the exchange, noting how Richard's hand had curled into a fist at his side, though his face maintained a mask of concerned parenthood. He was a man accustomed to controlling his environment, she realized, one who presented a carefully crafted image to the world while harboring darker impulses behind closed doors. "I think we've had enough consultations," Richard announced suddenly. "We'll get a second opinion elsewhere. Lily, get your coat." The abrupt attempt to leave set off alarm bells for both medical professionals. Dr. Bennett stepped between Richard and Lily. "Mr. Morgan, I strongly advise against leaving before we complete Lily's evaluation. She has a significant respiratory infection that requires treatment. Then prescribe the antibiotics and we'll be on our way," Richard demanded, his voice hardening. "I can't in good conscience do that without completing the proper diagnostic process," Dr. Bennett insisted. "Additionally, there are other concerns that have arisen during Lily's examination today." Richard went very still. "What concerns?" Eleanor moved closer to Lily, placing herself protectively beside the girl. Dr. Bennett chose his words carefully. During the physical examination, we observed bruising patterns that require further evaluation. I've already explained about her connective tissue disorder, Richard said dismissively, though a new tension had entered his posture. She bruises easily. It's genetic. Even so, we're required to follow certain protocols. This is ridiculous, Richard interrupted, his facade of patience cracking. I'm taking my daughter home now. Lily, come here. Lily slid off the examination table but hesitated, caught between her father's command and Eleanor's protective presence. Mr. Morgan, Eleanor said quietly, Lily has indicated to me that her injuries are the result of physical punishment, not accidents or a medical condition. The room went deathly silent. Richard's expression froze, then darkened as he looked at his daughter. Lily would never say such a thing, he said, his voice dangerously soft. She knows better. The threat implicit in those last 3 words hung in the air. Lily had gone very pale, but she didn't contradict Eleanor's statement. That silence was confirmation enough. Hospital security has already been notified, Dr. Bennett said calmly, and we're legally obligated to contact social services when we have reasonable cause to suspect abuse. Richard's carefully constructed control shattered. You have no right, he shouted, taking a step toward Dr. Bennett. She's my daughter. You can't just... The door opened, and James Cooper, the security officer, stepped inside, his presence commanding even without words. Is there a problem here? He asked, his experienced gaze taking in the situation at a glance. Richard stopped mid-sentence, visibly recalculating his options. The fury in his eyes gave way to something colder and more calculating. There's been a misunderstanding, he said, forcing his voice back to a reasonable tone. My daughter has a medical condition that causes easy bruising. These people are jumping to conclusions without proper evidence. Nevertheless, sir, we need to follow protocol, James said firmly. I'm going to have to ask you to step out into the hallway with me while the doctors complete their assessment. I'm not leaving my daughter, Richard insisted. Sir, that wasn't a request, James replied, his hand moving subtly toward the radio at his belt. For a moment, it seemed Richard might physically resist. Then, with a cold glance at Lily that made the girl shrink back against Eleanor, he allowed himself to be escorted from the room. Once he was gone, Lily's composure finally broke. Her small body began to tremble, and silent tears streaked down her pale cheeks. Eleanor knelt beside her, offering comfort without crowding her. You were very brave, Lily, she said softly. Very, very brave. He'll never forgive me, Lily whispered, her voice catching on a sob. But I couldn't keep pretending anymore. It hurts too much. Dr. Bennett quietly slipped out to make the necessary calls, leaving Eleanor alone with Lily. The nurse sat beside the girl on the examination table, careful not to crowd her but close enough to provide reassurance. None of this is your fault, Eleanor said firmly. What your father did was wrong, Lily. Very wrong. Adults should never hurt children, no matter what. Lily wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. He says I make him do it. That if I were better, he wouldn't have to. Her voice was so small, so resigned, that Eleanor felt her heart constrict. That's not true, she replied, keeping her voice gentle but resolute. Nothing you could do would make you deserve to be hurt. Nothing. The girl seemed to consider this, doubt clear in her reddened eyes. What's going to happen now? She finally asked, the question hanging heavy with fear and uncertainty. Eleanor chose her words carefully, knowing that honesty was crucial, but not wanting to overwhelm Lily further. Dr. Bennett is calling people whose job it is to keep children safe. They'll talk to you and to your father, and they'll make decisions about how to make sure you're not hurt anymore. Will I have to go away? Lily's hands twisted the hem of her cardigan anxiously. I don't know yet, Eleanor admitted, but wherever you go, it will be somewhere safe. That's the most important thing right now. Lily was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the floor. My mum used to say that, she finally murmured. That keeping me safe was the most important thing. Before she got sick, Eleanor felt a pang at the mention of Lily's mother. Your mum sounds like she loved you very much. She did. Lily's voice strengthened slightly. She wouldn't have wanted this. No, I'm sure she wouldn't have, Eleanor agreed. The door opened, and Dr. Bennett returned, accompanied by a woman in her 30s with a kind face and purposeful demeanor. Lily, this is Melissa Jones. She's a social worker who helps children like you. Melissa approached slowly, crouching down to Lily's eye level rather than looming over her. Hello, Lily. I know this is a very difficult day for you, but I want you to know how brave you are for telling the truth. Lily regarded the newcomer warily but didn't shrink away. Is my dad in trouble? Melissa nodded solemnly. Yes, he is. What he did was against the law, and there will be consequences for that. But right now, my main concern is you and making sure you're safe and taken care of. Outside in the corridor, they could hear raised voices. Richard, his control completely abandoned, was shouting demands and threats. The sounds made Lily flinch and press closer to Eleanor. He can't come in here, Eleanor assured her, placing a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. Security won't let him. Dr. Bennett moved toward the door. I should go help manage the situation, he said quietly to Eleanor. Will you stay with Lily and Ms. Jones? Eleanor nodded. She had no intention of leaving Lily now. After Dr. Bennett left, Melissa sat in the chair recently vacated by Richard, deliberately placing herself between Lily and the door. Lily, I need to ask you some questions, and I want you to know that it's okay to tell me the truth. No one is going to be angry with you, and nothing you say will get you in trouble. Can you do that? Lily gave a hesitant nod. Eleanor remained beside her, a silent source of support as Melissa gently but thoroughly began to document the abuse. The girl's answers were halting at first, but gradually, as she realized that no punishment would follow her words, she began to speak more freely. The picture that emerged was heartbreaking. A father whose grief had twisted into rage, a child who had become both the target of that rage and its caretaker, learning to navigate the unpredictable moods and violent outbursts while maintaining a facade of normalcy to the outside world. When did it start? Melissa asked. The hitting. Lily's brow furrowed in concentration. After Mum died. Not right away. At first, Dad just cried a lot and stayed in his room. Then he started drinking the grown-up drinks, and that's when he would get really angry. And that's when he started hurting you? Lily nodded. It was just yelling at first, then pushing. Then, she trailed off, her thin shoulders hunching inward at the memory. You're doing so well, Lily, Eleanor murmured encouragingly. Emboldened, the girl continued. It got worse when I got sick last winter. I had the flu, and I couldn't stop coughing at night. Dad said I was keeping him awake on purpose. She swallowed hard. He grabbed me really hard and shook me. That was the first time I got the big bruises. Eleanor fought to keep her expression neutral despite the wave of protective anger that surged within her. Beside her, Melissa was taking careful notes, her professional demeanor never slipping despite the disturbing account. What about doctors? Melissa asked. Did your father take you to see doctors for your injuries? Lily nodded again. Different ones. He always said I had the special condition that makes me bruise easy. He'd get mad if I said anything else. And did any of the doctors ever question this explanation? One did. A lady doctor. She asked me lots of questions when Dad went to get coffee. He was really angry after. We never went back there. And he said if I ever told anyone again, Lily's voice faltered. He'd what, Lily? Melissa prompted gently. He said I'd have to go away to a special school for bad children, and I'd never come home. He said no one would believe me anyway because he's a grown-up and I'm just a kid who makes things up. Eleanor closed her eyes briefly, pain and anger warring within her. It was the classic abuser's tactic: isolation, threats, creating a reality in which the victim believed they had no options, no escape, no one who would listen or help. Lily, Melissa said, her voice gentle but firm, What your father told you wasn't true. We believe you, and you're not going to be sent away for telling the truth." For the first time since Eleanor had met her, Lily's expression showed a flicker of hope. "Really? Really?" Melissa confirmed. "What happens next is that we find you a safe place to stay while we sort everything out." "Like where?" Lily asked, uncertainty creeping back into her voice. "We'll try to find family members first," Melissa explained. "Do you have any aunts or uncles or grandparents who you've stayed with before?" Lily thought for a moment. "Mum's sister, Aunt Claire. She lives in Edinburgh with Uncle Robert. We used to visit them before Mum got sick. They send me birthday cards still, but Dad doesn't let me call them." Melissa made a note. "That's very helpful. We'll try to contact them right away." The door opened again, and Dr. Bennett returned, his expression grim but composed. "Mr. Morgan has been taken to speak with the police," he informed them quietly. "They'd like to talk to Lily as well, but I've suggested they wait until tomorrow. She's had enough for one day." Melissa nodded agreement. "In the meantime, we need to arrange emergency placement for tonight. The process of contacting relatives in Edinburgh will take some time." "She's still a patient," Dr. Bennett pointed out. "The respiratory infection is genuine and needs treatment. I'd like to admit her overnight for observation and to start antibiotics." "That simplifies things," Melissa acknowledged. "She'll be safe here, and it gives us time to make proper arrangements." Throughout this discussion, Lily had remained silent, her eyes moving from one adult to another as they planned her immediate future. Finally, in a small voice that nonetheless commanded the attention of everyone in the room, she asked, "Will Nurse Eleanor stay with me?" The three adults exchanged glances. Eleanor's shift was technically ending soon, but the thought of leaving Lily now was unthinkable. "I'll stay as long as you need me," she promised, squeezing Lily's hand gently. "You won't be alone." Relief washed over the girl's face, and for the first time, Eleanor saw her shoulders relax slightly, as though some invisible weight had been partially lifted. "Let's get you settled in a proper room," Dr. Bennett suggested. "Something more comfortable than this examination room. And maybe some dinner? I bet you're hungry." Lily looked surprised, as if the suggestion of food had reminded her body of its basic needs. She nodded cautiously. As arrangements were made to transfer Lily to the inpatient pediatric unit, Eleanor stayed by her side, helping her gather the few belongings they'd brought to the hospital. Her small backpack with a book inside, the cardigan now draped over the chair, a water bottle decorated with horses. "Nurse Eleanor?" Lily asked as they waited for an orderly to arrive with a wheelchair. "Yes, sweetheart. Did I do the right thing? Telling?" The question carried the weight of all Lily's confusion and fear. A child forced to choose between loyalty to a parent and her own safety, between the devil she knew and the uncertainty that lay ahead. Eleanor knelt to meet Lily's eyes directly. "Yes," she said with absolute conviction. "You did the right thing. It was brave and strong and exactly right. And I'm very, very proud of you." Lily absorbed these words, turning them over as if testing their truth. Finally, she nodded, a tiny gesture of acceptance. In that moment, as the afternoon light slanted through the hospital window casting long shadows across the linoleum floor, Eleanor saw something shift in Lily's eyes. A flicker of what might someday become trust, might someday become healing. It was tenuous, fragile as a soap bubble, but it was there. And for today, in the aftermath of secrets revealed and facades shattered, that small beginning was enough. Lily settled into her hospital room with the wary alertness of a child accustomed to assessing new environments for threats. Her gaze mapped exit routes and hiding places, noted the positions of furniture and the distance to the door, habits formed through necessity rather than choice. Eleanor observed this silent reconnaissance without comment, recognizing it as the survival mechanism it was. Instead, she focused on making the sterile hospital room as comfortable as possible, adjusting the bed to Lily's preference and ensuring the call button was within easy reach. "Are you hungry now, or would you like to rest first?" she asked, giving Lily the small but significant power of choice. Lily considered this. "A little hungry," she admitted. "I'll see what the cafeteria has to offer." Eleanor promised. Any requests? Not soup, Lily said immediately, then looked down, as if expecting a reprimand for expressing a preference. Not soup, Eleanor agreed. How about a sandwich? Or maybe pasta? Sandwich, please, Lily replied, her voice gaining a hint of confidence. With cheese. Cheese sandwich it is. I'll be right back. Eleanor stepped out into the corridor, where Melissa was speaking quietly with the charge nurse for the pediatric inpatient unit, bringing her up to speed on Lily's situation. Security arrangements had been made. Richard Morgan would not be permitted entry to this floor, and a note had been placed on Lily's file restricting visitors. Any luck reaching the aunt and uncle? Eleanor asked when Melissa finished her briefing. The social worker nodded. I've left messages at several contact numbers. We should hear back by morning. In the meantime, we have approval for hospital admission as the emergency placement. I'll need to finish the paperwork, but Lily is officially in temporary protective custody now. Good. Eleanor felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. She's asked for a cheese sandwich. I was heading to the cafeteria. I'll come with you, Melissa offered. We can talk on the way. As they walked, Melissa filled Eleanor in on the immediate next steps. The police interview scheduled for tomorrow morning, the medical documentation needed, the process of building the case against Richard Morgan. He's still insisting it's all a misunderstanding, Melissa said, her tone making it clear what she thought of that claim. Says Lily has behavioral problems and a tendency to exaggerate. Claims she's been manipulated by hospital staff. Eleanor wasn't surprised. Classic Darvo. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. It's textbook. Exactly. And he's good at it. Very plausible, very convincing. If we didn't have Lily's statement and the medical evidence. Melissa trailed off, leaving the implication clear. He nearly got away with it again, Eleanor said softly, thinking of the other doctors, the other hospitals, all the missed opportunities for intervention. But he didn't, Melissa reminded her. Because you noticed what others missed. Eleanor shook her head. I just listened to my instincts. Nothing heroic about that. You'd be surprised how many people don't, Melissa replied. Or won't. When it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. They had reached the cafeteria. As Eleanor selected a cheese sandwich, apple slices, and a carton of milk for Lily, her mind kept returning to the girl waiting upstairs. A child who had endured so much pain yet still found the courage to reach for help when it was finally offered. She asked if she did the right thing, Eleanor told Melissa as they made their way back. Can you imagine? After everything, she's still questioning whether she should have protected him instead of herself. Melissa sighed. It's common with abuse victims, especially children. The loyalty remains even after the betrayal. It takes time to untangle those bonds. Will she get that time? The proper support, I'll make damn sure of it, Melissa said with quiet intensity. This is one that won't fall through the cracks. Not on my watch. Back in the room, they found Lily sitting exactly where Eleanor had left her, as if afraid to move without permission. Her eyes brightened slightly at the sight of the food tray, though she waited until Eleanor explicitly told her it was okay before reaching for the sandwich. Melissa settled into the visitor's chair by the window. Lily, I'm going to stay here for a little while too, if that's okay with you. I've been trying to reach your Aunt Claire and Uncle Robert. Lily paused mid-bite. Really? Are they coming to get me? We hope so. But first we need to talk to them and explain what's happening. It might take a little time to arrange everything. Lily nodded, processing this. Dad said they didn't want to see me anymore after Mum died. He said they blamed me too. Eleanor and Melissa exchanged glances, recognizing another of Richard's manipulations, isolating Lily from potential sources of support and safety. I don't think that's true, Melissa said gently. They've been sending you birthday cards, haven't they? People don't usually do that for someone they don't care about. Lily considered this logic, then nodded slowly. I guess not. As evening settled over the hospital, Lily gradually relaxed enough to eat half her sandwich and most of the apple slices. The antibiotics Dr. Bennett had prescribed were started via her IV, and the respiratory therapist visited to administer a breathing treatment for her congestion. Through it all, Eleanor remained. Her shift long since officially ended, but her commitment to Lily overriding any thought of leaving. When the girl's eyes began to grow heavy, Eleanor dimmed the lights and pulled the chair closer to the bed. "Will you be here when I wake up?" Lily asked, fighting against her drooping eyelids. "I will," Eleanor promised. "Try to get some sleep now. You're safe here." Lily studied her face for a moment, as if searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, she finally allowed her eyes to close. "Thank you," she whispered, the words barely audible as she drifted towards sleep. Melissa had stepped out to make more calls but returned as Lily was falling asleep. She watched from the doorway, then motioned for Eleanor to join her in the hallway. "I reached the aunt," she said quietly once they were outside. "Claire Nelson." She was shocked, to say the least. Apparently Richard has been feeding them a completely different narrative, that Lily didn't want to see them, that she was still too traumatized by her mother's death to handle reminders of that side of the family. But they never tried to verify this directly? Eleanor couldn't keep the edge from her voice. They did, actually, multiple times. Phone calls that went unanswered, emails returned as undeliverable. They even drove down from Edinburgh once, about 6 months ago. But Richard and Lily had just left for a holiday, according to the neighbor they spoke to. Eleanor shook her head, imagining the elaborate web of lies Richard had constructed to maintain his control. "The good news," Melissa continued, "is that they're eager to take Lily. Claire is catching the first train down tomorrow morning. From everything I can gather, they're appropriate guardians, financially stable, no criminal history, strong community ties. Robert is a secondary school teacher, and Claire is an illustrator for children's books." "That sounds promising," Eleanor agreed. "But Lily's been through so much. The transition won't be easy." "No, it won't," Melissa acknowledged. "But it's better than the alternatives." They both looked back through the doorway at the small figure now sleeping in the hospital bed. Her breath still slightly labored from the respiratory infection, but her face peaceful for the first time since Eleanor had met her. "You should get some rest too," Melissa told Eleanor. "There's an on-call room you can use if you insist on staying." Eleanor shook her head. "I'll doze in the chair. I promised her I'd be here when she wakes up, and I don't want her to panic if she opens her eyes and finds me gone." Melissa didn't argue, recognizing the depth of Eleanor's commitment. "I'll be back first thing in the morning. The police interview is scheduled for 10 o'clock. After Melissa left, Eleanor returned to the chair beside Lily's bed. The events of the day replayed in her mind. The subtle red flags, the mounting evidence, the moment of truth when Lily had finally revealed her bruises. So many things could have gone differently. If Dr. Bennett hadn't trusted Eleanor's instincts, if Richard hadn't stepped away for that phone call, if Lily hadn't found the courage to show her injuries, the what-ifs were endless and ultimately meaningless. What mattered was that today, the cycle had been broken. Today, one vulnerable child had been removed from danger. It wasn't a solution to the broader problem of child abuse, but it was something tangible, something real. One life potentially redirected from continued suffering toward the possibility of healing. Eleanor watched the steady rise and fall of Lily's chest, listened to the soft sound of her breathing gradually becoming less labored as the medications began to work. Outside, the rain had stopped, and moonlight filtered through the partially drawn curtains, casting a gentle silver glow across the room. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The police interview, the reunion with relatives who were essentially strangers to Lily, the beginning of legal proceedings against Richard. The road ahead would not be easy or straightforward. Recovery never was. But tonight, in this quiet room, with security posted in the corridor and treatment flowing through her IV, Lily Morgan was safe. And for Eleanor, that knowledge was enough to bring a measure of peace as she settled into the uncomfortable chair for the night, keeping her promise to a brave little girl who had finally found someone who would listen. Outside in the city, life continued its relentless pace. Traffic lights changed, night shift workers began their rounds, families gathered for evening meals. And in room 217 of Mercy General Hospital's pediatric ward, a small but significant victory had been won in the endless battle against darkness. Not through dramatic intervention or heroic action, but through nothing more complicated than a nurse who paid attention, a doctor who asked the right questions, and a child who, when finally given the chance, found the courage to speak her truth. Morning arrived in a wash of pale sunlight through the hospital window. Eleanor awoke with a stiff neck and aching back, the inevitable consequence of a night spent in the unyielding visitor's chair. She dozed rather than truly slept, waking at each small sound. The quiet beep of monitors, the squeak of nurses' shoes in the corridor, Lily's occasional restless movements. Now, as she straightened and rolled her shoulders to ease the discomfort, Eleanor found Lily already awake, watching her with those same observant eyes. "Good morning," Eleanor said softly. "How are you feeling?" Lily seemed to consider the question seriously, as though taking inventory of her physical and emotional state. "My chest doesn't hurt as much," she finally answered. "The medicine helped." "That's good." Eleanor moved to check the IV line, falling back on the familiar routine of medical tasks. "Are you hungry? Breakfast should be coming around soon." Lily nodded cautiously. "What time is it?" "Just past 7. Eleanor noted how the girl's gaze kept drifting to the door. "Are you worried about your father?" A hesitant nod. Is he still here? At the hospital?" "No," Eleanor assured her. "He's not allowed to come back. There are security guards who make sure of that." Relief washed over Lily's face, followed immediately by confusion and a flicker of guilt. The complicated emotions of a child whose relationship with her parent had been twisted by abuse, but who still felt the pull of familial loyalty. "It's okay to feel relieved," Eleanor told her gently. "And it's also okay if you have other feelings, even if you miss him. All of that is normal." Lily pulled her knees up to her chest beneath the hospital blanket, making herself smaller. "Is it normal to feel scared about what happens next?" "Absolutely," Eleanor confirmed. "Changes are always scary, especially big ones, but you don't have to figure it all out alone. There are people who will help you every step of the way." Before Lily could respond, there was a light knock at the door. Dr. Bennett entered, accompanied by a different nurse, Maya, who worked the morning shift on the pediatric ward. "Good morning, Lily," Dr. Bennett greeted her warmly. "And Eleanor, I suspected I'd find you still here." Eleanor gave a sheepish smile. "I promised I'd stay." Dr. Bennett nodded, understanding in his eyes, before turning his attention back to Lily. "How's that cough today? Any better?" The medical examination proceeded smoothly, confirming that the antibiotics were beginning to work against the respiratory infection. Throughout, Eleanor noted how Dr. Bennett addressed his questions directly to Lily rather than talking over her head, a small kindness that seemed to help the girl relax incrementally. "You're responding well to treatment," he concluded. "Another day or two of antibiotics, and I think we'll have that infection under control." Lily nodded, then asked in a small voice, "Is the lady coming back? The one who asked questions yesterday. Ms. Jones?" "Yes, she'll be here later this morning," Dr. Bennett confirmed. "And there are some police officers who would like to talk with you as well, but only if you feel up to it." Fear flickered across Lily's face. "Am I in trouble?" "Not at all," Dr. Bennett assured her. "They just need to hear what happened from you directly. Ms. Jones will be with you the whole time, and Nurse Eleanor too, if you'd like." Lily glanced at Eleanor, who gave an encouraging nod. "I'll stay if you want me to." "Please," Lily whispered, the single word carrying the weight of her trust. After Dr. Bennett and Maya left, breakfast arrived: toast, scrambled eggs, fruit, and juice. Eleanor helped Lily adjust her bed to a sitting position and arranged the tray within easy reach. "Eat what you can," she encouraged. "You need your strength." Lily picked up a piece of toast, examining it as if unsure what to do with it. "My dad doesn't let me eat until he says it's okay," she said matter-of-factly. The casual statement, delivered without drama or self-pity, struck Eleanor like a physical blow. She masked her reaction, keeping her voice conversational. "Well, here in the hospital you can eat whenever meals are served. No need to wait for permission." Lily considered this, then took a tentative bite of toast. Something about that small act of autonomy, eating without awaiting approval, seemed to bolster her confidence. She took another bite, larger this time. As Lily ate, Eleanor used the time to freshen up in the small ensuite bathroom. She had been wearing the same scrubs for over 24 hours now, but a quick wash and the spare toothbrush from her locker helped her feel somewhat renewed. When she returned, she found Lily had eaten half the breakfast, progress from the previous night. "What are the police going to ask me?" the girl inquired, pushing the tray aside. Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "They'll want to know about what happened at home, about how you got hurt. Will they think I'm lying? Dad says no one believes children over adults. These police officers are specially trained to work with children," Eleanor explained. "They won't think you're lying. And remember, the doctors have seen your injuries. That's evidence that supports what you tell them." Lily was quiet for a moment, processing this. "Will I have to see my dad when I talk to them?" "No," Eleanor assured her firmly. "He won't be there. You'll be in a safe, private room with just the people you choose to have with you." This seemed to ease some of Lily's tension. She leaned back against the pillows, studying Eleanor with that same thoughtful, assessing gaze that had struck the nurse from their first meeting. "Why did you help me? Other doctors and nurses didn't." The directness of the question caught Eleanor off guard. She considered how to answer honestly without burdening Lily with her own past regrets. "Sometimes people don't see what they're not looking for," she said carefully. "Or they see, but they convince themselves there's another explanation. I've learned to trust what I observe, even when it would be easier not to." Lily seemed to accept this. "I tried to show someone before, a teacher at my old school. She saw bruises on my arm when my sleeve rolled up in class." "What happened?" Eleanor asked gently. "Dad told her I fell off my bike. Then he moved me to a different school the next week." Lily's fingers plucked restlessly at the blanket. "He said if I ever tried to tell again, things would get much worse." Eleanor felt a surge of anger at the thought of how effectively Richard had isolated and silenced his daughter. "He was wrong to threaten you, Lily, and I'm sorry that teacher didn't look more closely." "It's not her fault," Lily said, with a maturity beyond her years. "Dad is very good at making people believe him. He does it at work too. Makes people think he's nice." Before Eleanor could respond, there was another knock at the door. Melissa Jones entered, looking fresh and professional in a navy blue suit, though the shadows under her eyes suggested she'd had a long night as well. "Good morning, Lily," she greeted warmly. "I'm glad to see you looking a bit better today." Behind her came a woman Eleanor didn't recognize. Tall, with auburn hair pulled back in a neat ponytail and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "This is Detective Andrea, right?" Melissa introduced her. "She works with children and families." Detective Wright approached the bed slowly, maintaining a respectful distance. She wore plain clothes rather than a uniform, a deliberate choice Eleanor knew to appear less intimidating to a child. "Hello, Lily," she said, her voice gentle but not condescending. "I've heard you've been very brave." Lily regarded the newcomer warily. "Are you going to arrest my dad?" The direct question hung in the air for a moment. Detective Wright didn't flinch from it. "Your father is already helping us with our questions at the police station. What happens next will depend partly on what you tell us today, and partly on what the doctors have found." Eleanor appreciated the detective's honesty. No false promises, no sugarcoating. Lily seemed to appreciate it too, relaxing fractionally. "Ms. Jones tells me you'd like Nurse Eleanor to stay with you during our talk," Detective Wright continued. "That's absolutely fine. We have a special room where we can talk more comfortably. It has armchairs and even some toys if you'd like." "I'm not a baby," Lily said, a flash of indignation briefly overtaking her apprehension. Detective Wright smiled. "Of course not. But sometimes it helps to have something to hold or fidget with while talking about difficult things. Even adults find that useful." This seemed to make sense to Lily. She nodded cautiously. "When do we have to go?" "Whenever you're ready," Detective Wright said. "There's no rush. We want you to be comfortable. Can I get dressed first?" I don't want to wear this hospital gown. Melissa stepped forward. I brought you some clothes. She held up a small backpack. The hospital has a program for children who need emergency items. Everything should be about your size. The simple dignity of proper clothes seemed deeply important to Lily, and Eleanor understood why. Control over one's appearance was a basic form of autonomy, something Lily had likely been denied in countless ways. I'll help you get changed, Eleanor offered. And then we can go whenever you're ready. With the other adults waiting in the corridor, Eleanor helped Lily into the new clothes. Jeans, a simple green t-shirt, a navy hoodie, and fresh socks. The girl winced when raising her arms, the bruises on her torso clearly still painful. Take it slow, Eleanor advised gently. There's no rush. Once dressed, Lily stood straighter, as if the clothes themselves provided a kind of armor. She looked younger and simultaneously older, a child in children's clothes, but with eyes that had seen too much. Ready? Eleanor asked. Lily took a deep breath and nodded. I think so. Together, they joined Melissa and Detective Wright in the corridor. A wheelchair had been brought for Lily, standard protocol for patients being transported within the hospital, but she eyed it with suspicion. I can walk, she insisted. Hospital rules, Eleanor explained. Everyone gets a ride, even grown-ups sometimes. But you can get out and walk once we reach the special room. This compromise seemed acceptable to Lily. She settled into the wheelchair, allowing Eleanor to adjust the footrests. As they moved through the corridors, Eleanor noticed how Lily tracked their route, noting landmarks and turns, as if mapping an escape path. The habit spoke volumes about her life before yesterday. Always vigilant, always preparing for danger. The interview room was located in a quiet wing of the hospital, designed specifically for sensitive conversations with children. When they arrived, Eleanor understood why Detective Wright had described it as special. Unlike the clinical spaces of the main hospital, this room was painted in warm colors, with comfortable furniture, art on the walls, and a small table with drawing supplies. A discreet camera was mounted in one corner. The interview would be recorded, sparing Lily from having to repeat her story unnecessarily. What do you think? Detective Wright asked as Lily stood from the wheelchair, looking around. It's nice, the girl admitted, gravitating toward an armchair with cushions. Would you like something to drink before we start? Water, juice, hot chocolate? Lily hesitated, still unaccustomed to being offered choices. Hot chocolate? She finally ventured, the upward inflection making it more question than request. Hot chocolate it is. Detective Wright agreed, sending a quick text on her phone. It'll be here in a few minutes. Meanwhile, would you like me to explain how this works? Lily nodded, settling into the armchair. Eleanor sat nearby, close enough to provide support but not so close as to crowd her. Melissa positioned herself slightly apart, notebook ready. First of all, Lily, I want you to know that you can take breaks whenever you need to. Detective Wright began, sitting across from them. If you get tired or upset, or just need a moment, you only have to say so. There are no wrong answers here. I just want to hear what happened in your own words. Lily was listening intently, her posture alert but less rigid than before. I'll be asking questions, but you're the one who knows what happened. If I get something wrong, or if you remember something I haven't asked about, you can tell me. And if you don't know the answer or don't remember something, that's perfectly okay. Just say so. There was a knock at the door, and a hospital volunteer delivered the promised hot chocolate. Lily accepted the warm mug with both hands, the simple comfort seeming to ground her. Are you ready to begin? Detective Wright asked gently. Lily took a sip of her drink, then nodded. I think so. What followed was one of the most difficult conversations Eleanor had ever witnessed. With remarkable skill, Detective Wright guided Lily through her experiences, starting with general questions about her home life and gradually moving toward the specific incidents of abuse. She used developmentally appropriate language, open-ended questions, and never pushed when Lily struggled to articulate certain memories. Can you tell me about what happens when your dad gets angry? Was one such question. Lily's hands tightened around the mug. He gets really quiet at first. That's how I know it's coming. Then his face gets red, and he talks in his special voice. His special voice? Really low and slow. That's the scary one. When he yells, it's not as bad as the special voice. Throughout, Eleanor marveled at Lily's clarity and recall. Despite her youth, she provided detailed accounts of specific incidents, dates tied to school events or holidays, and precise descriptions of her injuries. The picture that emerged was one of escalating abuse following her mother's death, beginning with emotional cruelty and isolation, progressing to grabbing and shaking, and eventually to deliberate, calculated physical punishment. He says it's discipline, Lily explained at one point, that I need it because I don't have a mother to teach me properly. But Mum never hit me, not ever. The most disturbing revelations concerned Richard's methods of concealing the abuse, coaching Lily before doctor's appointments, creating elaborate explanations for injuries, isolating her from anyone who might notice or intervene, and using the fictional Ehlers-Danlos diagnosis as cover. He made me practice saying it, Lily recalled. Made me remember all the symptoms from the internet. Said I had to be consistent or they'd take me away. By the time they paused for a break, nearly an hour had passed. Lily's hot chocolate had gone cold, and the emotional toll of the interview was evident in her pale face and tense shoulders. Eleanor suggested a proper break for lunch, which Detective Wright readily agreed to. You're doing brilliantly, Lily, the detective assured her. We've covered a lot already. Just a few more questions after lunch, if that's okay with you. They returned to Lily's hospital room, where a lunch tray was waiting. The girl seemed emotionally drained but also somehow lighter, as if the telling itself had released some of the burden she'd been carrying. Was that okay? She asked Eleanor when they were briefly alone. Did I say the right things? You did exactly right, Eleanor assured her. You told the truth, and that's all anyone can ask. I'm very proud of you. Lily picked at her lunch, a sandwich, apple slices, and juice. What about my dad? What's happening to him now? Eleanor chose her words carefully. He's with the police answering their questions. The things you've told Detective Wright will help them decide what happens next. Will he go to jail? Lily's voice was small, conflicted. I don't know for certain, Eleanor answered honestly. But what he did was against the law, so there will be consequences. Lily was quiet for a long moment. I don't want him to hurt me anymore, she finally said. But I don't know if I want him to go to jail either. Is that bad? Not at all, Eleanor assured her. It's completely normal to have mixed feelings. He's still your dad, even though he did things he shouldn't have done. Lily considered this, absently tracing the pattern on her juice cup. Ms. Jones said my aunt is coming today. From Edinburgh. That's right. Are you looking forward to seeing her? I don't really remember her much, Lily admitted. Just that she has red hair and she used to make me laugh. And she smells like pencils because of her drawing. The detail was so specific, so innocently childlike, that Eleanor felt her heart constrict. Despite everything, underneath the hypervigilance and premature maturity, Lily was still very much a child, one who noticed and remembered the scent of pencils on her aunt's hands. Ms. Jones says she's an illustrator for children's books, Eleanor said. Maybe that's why. Really? For the first time, genuine interest animated Lily's features. What books? I'm not sure, but you can ask her when she arrives. The prospect of this connection to her mother's family seemed to energize Lily. She took another bite of her sandwich, her movements less mechanical than before. After lunch, they returned to the interview room to complete the session with Detective Wright. The remaining questions focused on specific incidents Dr. Bennett had documented, the finger-shaped bruises on her arms, the older injuries visible on the x-rays, the healed fracture in her left wrist. When asked about the wrist, Lily's voice grew very small. He said if I told anyone about that one, he'd break the other one. He took me to a hospital really far away, not in Manchester. Told them I fell out of a tree. By the time the interview concluded, it was mid-afternoon. Lily was exhausted but calm, having navigated the ordeal with remarkable composure. Detective Wright thanked her sincerely, emphasizing again how brave she had been. What happens now? Lily asked as they prepared to leave the room. Now we continue our investigation, Detective Wright explained. The information you've shared helps us understand exactly what happened and what needs to be done to keep you safe. Will I have to go to court? To see my dad again? Not for a long time, if at all, the detective assured her. And if there ever is a court hearing where you need to be present, there are special arrangements to make sure you feel safe. This seemed to satisfy Lily for the moment. As they returned to her room, Eleanor noticed the girl was flagging, the emotional exertion of the day taking its toll. Why don't you rest for a bit? She suggested once Lily was settled back in bed. Your aunt probably won't arrive for another hour or so. Too tired to argue, Lily nodded. Eleanor adjusted the blinds to dim the afternoon sunlight and pulled the covers up around the girl's thin shoulders. Will you stay? Lily asked, fighting against heavy eyelids. I'll be right here, Eleanor promised, resuming her post in the chair beside the bed. Within minutes, Lily had drifted off. Her face relaxed in sleep in a way it never quite was when she was awake. Eleanor watched her. This child who had endured so much yet found the courage to speak when finally given the chance. She was still there when Melissa returned an hour later, accompanied by Dr. Bennett. How did the interview go? Dr. Bennett asked quietly, careful not to wake the sleeping child. As well as could be expected, Eleanor replied. She was remarkably composed, given the circumstances. Detective Wright was excellent with her. Melissa nodded in agreement. The recording will be powerful evidence. Combined with the medical documentation, we have a very strong case. What's happening with the father? Dr. Bennett inquired. Still being questioned, Melissa said, lowering her voice further. He maintained his innocence at first, trying to paint Lily as troubled and manipulative. But when confronted with the medical evidence and specific details from Lily's statement, his story started falling apart. The detective thinks he'll eventually confess to at least some of the charges. And the aunt? Eleanor asked. Is she still coming today? Yes, her train arrives at 4. She should be here by 5. Melissa checked her watch. Another hour or so. I spoke with her again this morning. She's understandably upset but very eager to see Lily. She's already making arrangements for a place for Lily to stay in Edinburgh and looking into local doctors and therapists. That sounds promising, Dr. Bennett commented. What's your impression of her as a potential guardian? Very positive so far, Melissa replied. She seems stable, committed, and genuinely concerned for Lily's welfare. She and her husband have been trying to maintain contact with Lily since her mother's death, despite Richard's interference. They sent cards, gifts, tried to call. They even drove down from Edinburgh once, but Richard managed to avoid them. The thought of people who had been actively trying to remain in Lily's life, people who might have helped her sooner if Richard hadn't been so effective at isolating her, was both heartening and painful. Eleanor found herself hoping fervently that the aunt would provide the safe haven Lily so desperately needed. Dr. Bennett excused himself to attend to other patients, and Melissa settled into the second visitor's chair with her ever-present notebook. The two women sat in companionable silence, keeping watch over the sleeping child as afternoon shadows lengthened across the room. You've gone well beyond professional obligation here, Melissa observed quietly. Staying all night, being present for the interview, holding her hand through all of it. Eleanor shrugged. She needed someone in her corner. It's more than that, though, isn't it? Melissa's perceptive gaze held Eleanor's. This case is personal for you somehow. Eleanor hesitated, then nodded slightly. 7 years ago, I had a patient, a boy just 6 years old. There were signs similar to Lily's, but less obvious. I raised concerns, but the father was charming, respected in the community. Everyone gave him the benefit of the doubt. Melissa waited patiently as Eleanor gathered herself to continue. 3 months later, the boy was brought to A&E with a skull fracture. He survived, but with permanent damage. I've often wondered what might have been different if I'd pushed harder, been more insistent about my concerns. You can't carry that responsibility, Melissa said gently. The system fails children far too often, but that failure is collective, not individual. Intellectually, I know that, Eleanor acknowledged. But seeing Lily, hearing her describe how other medical professionals missed or ignored the signs, I couldn't let it happen again. Not on my watch. Well, whatever your reasons, Lily's fortunate you were the nurse assigned to her case yesterday. Melissa glanced at the sleeping child. You've made a real difference for her. Before Eleanor could respond, Lily stirred, her eyes blinking open as she oriented herself to her surroundings. For a brief moment, confusion and fear flickered across her face, the disorientation of waking in a strange place, before recognition dawned. Did I sleep long? She asked, her voice husky with rest. Just an hour or so, Eleanor assured her. How do you feel? Okay. Lily pushed herself to a sitting position, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at sore muscles. Is my aunt here yet? Not yet, but soon, Melissa told her. Do you remember much about her? Lily's forehead creased in concentration. She looks a bit like my mum, but with red hair instead of blonde. She laughs a lot, and she draws pictures for books. That's right, Melissa confirmed. Her name is Claire Nelson, and she's your mother's younger sister. She's married to your Uncle Robert, who teaches at a school in Edinburgh. Will I live with them now? Lily asked, the question direct as always. That's the plan if you're comfortable with it and if everything checks out, Melissa explained. We're arranging what's called a kinship placement. That means staying with relatives instead of with strangers. Lily considered this information carefully. What about my things? My books and clothes and stuff. We'll arrange to collect what you need from your house, Melissa assured her. Is there anything special you want to make sure we get? Lily hesitated, as if debating whether to share something important. There's a box under my bed, she finally said. A blue metal one. It has my special things in it. And a notebook where I wrote things down sometimes. About what happened. Eleanor and Melissa exchanged a glance, recognizing both the courage it took for Lily to reveal this and the potential evidentiary value of such a document. We'll make sure to find it, Melissa promised. Is there anything else? My rabbit, Lily said. He's stuffed, not real. He's old and kind of flat now, but I've had him since I was little. Dad said I was too old for him, but I kept him hidden in my closet. The mention of this treasured comfort object, hidden away from her father's disapproval, brought a lump to Eleanor's throat. We'll definitely get your rabbit, she assured Lily. A gentle knock at the door interrupted their conversation. A nurse Eleanor recognized from the pediatric ward peeked in. There's a Claire Nelson here, she announced. Says she's the patient's aunt? Lily went very still, her eyes wide with a complex mixture of hope and apprehension. Eleanor gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. Remember, you don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with. If you want to take things slowly with your aunt, that's completely okay. Melissa stood, straightening her jacket. I'll go greet her and bring her in. If that's all right with you, Lily? The girl nodded, her hands clutching the blanket as if seeking an anchor in the face of this new uncertainty. When Melissa stepped out, Lily turned to Eleanor with naked vulnerability in her expression. What if she doesn't like me? What if I'm too much trouble? Oh, Lily, Eleanor said softly. That won't happen. From everything Melissa has said, your aunt has been trying to reach you for years. She's traveled all the way from Edinburgh today just to see you. But what if I do something wrong? What if she gets angry like Dad does? The question revealed the depth of Lily's uncertainty about adults and their reactions, a natural consequence of living with unpredictable violence. Not everyone is like your dad, Eleanor told her gently. Most adults don't hurt children, no matter what. Your aunt and uncle want to take care of you, not hurt you. Lily didn't look entirely convinced, but she nodded, squaring her small shoulders as if preparing to face whatever came next. The door opened again, and Melissa returned, accompanied by a woman in her mid-30s with vibrant auburn hair pulled back in a loose bun. Claire Nelson had the same blue eyes as Lily, though her face was softer, more open than her niece's guarded expression. She paused in the doorway, her gaze finding Lily with a mixture of joy and heartbreak. Lily, she said softly, her Scottish accent gentle on the name. Oh, my darling girl, look how you've grown. For a long moment, aunt and niece simply studied each other across the room, bridging a 2-year separation and the chasm of all that had happened in between. Then Claire moved forward slowly, giving Lily time to adjust to her presence. Do you remember me at all? She asked, stopping a respectful distance from the bed. It's been a while. Lily nodded cautiously. You draw pictures for books, she said. And you smell like pencils. Claire's eyes filled with tears, though she blinked them back quickly. That's right. I do smell like pencils most of the time. What an amazing memory you have. What books do you draw? Lily asked, curiosity momentarily overcoming her wariness. All sorts, Claire replied, seizing on this opening. Mostly adventure stories and fairy tales. I've brought some with me, if you'd like to see them later. Lily nodded, her interest visibly piqued. Eleanor began to stand, sensing that her presence might now be intrusive to this family reunion. I should give you some privacy. No! Lily's hand shot out, grasping Eleanor's wrist with surprising strength. Please stay. Claire looked between them, understanding dawning in her eyes. You must be Nurse Palmer, she said. Melissa told me how you've been looking after Lily. Eleanor nodded. Please call me Eleanor. Thank you, Claire said simply, those 2 words carrying the weight of everything she couldn't adequately express. For seeing what others missed. For being here for her. I'm happy to wait outside, Melissa offered tactfully. Give you all some time to get reacquainted. I'll be just down the hall if you need me. After Melissa left, Claire approached the bed more closely, though she didn't attempt to touch Lily or sit on the edge of the bed as many relatives might have done. Instead, she pulled up a chair, positioning herself where Lily could see her clearly without feeling crowded. I've missed you so much, Lily, she said softly. I want you to know that Robert and I tried to see you many times. Your father. She paused, clearly measuring her words. He made it very difficult. He said you didn't want to see me anymore. Lily admitted, still watching her aunt carefully. That you were too busy. Claire shook her head firmly. That wasn't true. We wrote letters, made phone calls. We even drove all the way to Manchester once. But your father told the neighbors you were away on holiday. Lily absorbed this information, another piece of the complex puzzle of deception her father had constructed. Did you know? She asked suddenly. About what he was doing to me? The directness of the question seemed to catch Claire off guard, but she recovered quickly, understanding that Lily needed honesty more than comfort in this moment. I suspected something wasn't right, she admitted. The few times we managed to speak to you on the phone, you sounded different, quieter, careful about what you said, and your father's behavior was becoming increasingly controlling. I was worried enough that we contacted social services once, but without specific evidence. She trailed off, regret etched in her features. It's not your fault, Lily said, echoing what she told Eleanor about her teacher. Dad is good at making people believe him. Claire blinked back tears again, visibly moved by her niece's generosity in the face of her own suffering. He is, but I still wish I'd done more, tried harder somehow. You're here now, Lily pointed out pragmatically. Yes, Claire agreed, a smile breaking through her sorrow. I am, and I'm not going anywhere without you. A tentative hope flickered in Lily's eyes. Ms. Jones said I might go to live with you. In Edinburgh. That's right. If you want to, of course. We have a spare room that would be yours. It's not very big, but it has a window seat where you can read, and you can decorate it however you like. Claire spoke enthusiastically but not too quickly, giving Lily space to process each piece of information. What about school? Lily asked, practical even in her uncertainty. There's a lovely primary school just a few streets from our house. Robert knows the headmistress. She's very kind. But we don't have to decide everything right away, Claire hastened to add. The most important thing is that you feel safe and comfortable. For the first time, a ghost of a smile touched Lily's lips. Does it snow in Edinburgh? Dad said it did. but he says lots of things that aren't true. It does snow in winter, yes, Claire confirmed. Not all the time, but we usually have a few good snowfalls each year. Do you like snow? Lily nodded. I made a snowman once at my old school. Before. She trailed off, not needing to complete the sentence. Claire seemed to understand exactly what remained unspoken. Well, we can make snowmen together this winter. And go sledding on Arthur's Seat if there's enough snow. Robert is quite the expert sledder, though he usually ends up crashing spectacularly. This earned a more definite smile from Lily, something Eleanor hadn't seen before. A brief glimpse of the child beneath the carefully constructed armor. Their conversation continued, Claire gently sharing details about life in Edinburgh, the home she shared with Robert, their cat named Pickle who had a habit of sleeping in laundry baskets. She produced photos on her phone. The house with its red door, Robert standing in their small garden, Pickle sprawled on a sunny windowsill. Lily absorbed everything with quiet intensity, asking occasional questions that revealed both her anxiety and her hope. Would I have my own room? Is the school far to walk? Does Pickle like children? Throughout the exchange, Eleanor remained seated on Lily's other side, a silent but reassuring presence. She watched the tentative rebuilding of a relationship that had been deliberately severed by Richard, marveling at Claire's patient, gentle approach and Lily's cautious but growing responsiveness. After about an hour, Lily's energy began to flag, the day's emotional demands taking their toll. Eleanor noted the shadows under her eyes and the way her responses were becoming less focused. I think Lily might need a bit of rest, Eleanor suggested gently. It's been quite an overwhelming day. Claire immediately nodded understanding. Of course, I'm staying at a hotel nearby, Lily, but I'll be back first thing tomorrow morning. Is that all right? Lily hesitated, then asked in a small voice, You promise you'll come back? The question, with its undertone of abandonment fear, was heartbreaking in its simplicity. Claire met her niece's eyes steadily. I promise. Nothing could keep me away. And here, she reached into her bag and pulled out a business card, handing it to Lily. This has my mobile number on it. Nurse Eleanor can help you call me anytime if you need to, even just to make sure I'm really coming back. The concrete evidence of her aunt's accessibility seemed to reassure Lily. She carefully took the card, examining it before placing it on her bedside table where she could easily see it. I'll walk you out, Eleanor offered, standing after ensuring Lily was comfortable with her brief absence. In the hallway, once they were out of Lily's earshot, Claire's composure faltered slightly. How is she really? She asked, her voice thick with emotion. Medically, they told me about the pneumonia, but what about the other injuries? Eleanor led her to a quiet corner of the corridor. The respiratory infection is responding well to antibiotics. As for the injuries from the abuse, she hesitated, weighing professional discretion against a future guardian's need to know. There are extensive bruises in various stages of healing, suggesting ongoing physical abuse over a period of months. X-rays showed a previously healed wrist fracture and 2 healed rib fractures that were never properly treated. Claire pressed a hand to her mouth, tears filling her eyes. Oh God, she whispered. How did we not know? How did he hide this so completely? He was very calculating, Eleanor said gently. From what Lily has told us, he deliberately isolated her, controlled all her medical care, and moved her between schools whenever anyone started asking questions. And he used the supposed Ehlers-Danlos diagnosis as cover for her injuries. Jennifer, Lily's mother, my sister, she had hypermobile joints, but nothing diagnosed, Claire said, her voice steadying with effort. Richard apparently expanded that into a full genetic disorder after she died. It gave him the perfect explanation for bruising. Eleanor nodded grimly. Unfortunately, that's not uncommon in abuse cases. Medical conditions, real or fabricated, can become effective covers. And Lily was thoroughly coached on what to say to doctors. Claire wiped at her eyes, gathering herself with visible effort. What happens now? Legally, will he go to prison? That's for the courts to decide, but based on the evidence and Lily's testimony, It's very likely there will be serious charges. Detective Wright seems confident in the case. Good, Claire said firmly, a flash of steel showing through her gentle demeanor. He deserves to face consequences for what he's done. Ms. Jones mentioned you're making arrangements for Lily in Edinburgh? Eleanor prompted. Claire nodded, seemingly grateful for the change to a more actionable topic. Yes, we've already contacted a pediatrician who specializes in trauma and a child psychologist recommended by social services. Our spare room is ready. I've been keeping it prepared ever since Jennifer died, hoping someday Lily might visit. Her voice caught slightly on the last words. Eleanor was impressed by Claire's quick mobilization of resources. That's excellent. Continuity of care will be important for her recovery. How long do you think before she can travel to Edinburgh? The social worker mentioned something about temporary custody arrangements that might take a few days. Dr. Bennett will make the final medical decision, but from a health perspective, I'd expect she could be discharged within 2 to 3 days, assuming the pneumonia continues to improve. The legal process for temporary custody may take a bit longer. Claire nodded understanding. I've taken a leave of absence from work, so I can stay in Manchester as long as necessary. Robert will join us this weekend to help with the transition. Before Eleanor could respond, her attention was caught by movement at Lily's door. The girl had gotten out of bed and was standing in the doorway, watching them with anxious eyes, clearly concerned by Eleanor's absence despite their conversation being visible from her room. Everything's okay, Lily? Eleanor called gently. I was just talking with your aunt for a moment. You should be resting. I thought maybe you weren't coming back, Lily admitted, her voice small but candid. The simple statement revealed the depth of Lily's abandonment fears. Despite Eleanor's consistent presence over the past 24 hours, part of her still expected to be left alone. Claire approached her niece with a warm smile. I was just getting some information from Nurse Eleanor about when you might be able to come to Edinburgh. But she's right, you should be resting. Would you like me to help you back to bed before I go? Lily considered this offer, then nodded slightly. It was a small thing, allowing her aunt to help her back to bed, but Eleanor recognized it as a significant step toward trust. As Claire gently tucked the blankets around Lily, she promised again to return first thing in the morning. And remember, you can have Nurse Eleanor call me anytime if you need to talk. Okay, Lily said, her eyelids already growing heavy despite her efforts to stay alert. Goodbye, Aunt Claire. The formal use of Aunt Claire, rather than simply Claire, seemed to touch the woman deeply. Goodbye for now, Lily. Sleep well. After Claire departed, Eleanor resumed her position in the chair beside Lily's bed. She seems lovely, she commented, and very eager to help you. She's different from how I remembered, Lily murmured, fighting against encroaching sleep. Sadder. Eleanor wasn't surprised by the observation. Lily's perceptiveness had been evident from their first meeting. I imagine she's been very worried about you, and sad about being kept away. Lily nodded slightly, her eyes drifting closed. She still smells like pencils, though, she mumbled, the words slurring as sleep began to claim her. That's the same. Within minutes, Lily had fallen into a deep sleep, the emotional exertion of the day finally overtaking her. Eleanor remained at her post, watching the steady rise and fall of the girl's chest, noting how even in sleep there remained a certain tension in her small frame, a vigilance that couldn't yet be fully abandoned. The door opened quietly, and Melissa slipped in. How did it go? She whispered, nodding toward the sleeping child. Better than I expected, Eleanor replied softly. There's a genuine connection there, despite the years apart. Claire was wonderful with her. Patient, gentle, not pushing for affection or rushing the process. That's consistent with my impression of her, Melissa agreed. The background checks have all come back clear, and their home study in Edinburgh is scheduled for tomorrow. If all goes well, we should have temporary custody arrangements finalized within a week. Eleanor nodded, relief washing through her. After the horrors Lily had endured, it seemed she might have the chance for a genuine fresh start with family who truly cared for her. What about the father? She asked, keeping her voice low. Any updates? Melissa's expression darkened slightly. He's still being questioned. Detective Wright says he initially tried to maintain the story about Ehlers-Danlos and Lily being prone to exaggeration, but when confronted with the medical evidence and details from Lily's interview, he started to crack. No formal confession yet, but their confident charges will be filed regardless. Good, Eleanor said firmly. After what he's done, he needs to face consequences. The legal process will take time, Melissa cautioned, and Lily may eventually need to testify, though there are ways to make that less traumatic. Video links, screens in the courtroom, that sort of thing. Eleanor glanced at the sleeping child, imagining the courage it would take to testify against her father. She's stronger than she looks, she said softly. I think she'll do whatever's necessary. Melissa studied Eleanor for a moment. You've become quite attached to her, she observed, not unkindly. I suppose I have, Eleanor admitted. It's hard not to, given the circumstances. Just be careful, Melissa advised gently. For both your sakes. She's going to be moving to Edinburgh, starting a new life. Clean breaks can sometimes be easier in these situations. Eleanor understood the warning. Becoming too emotionally involved with patients was a professional hazard, especially in cases like Lily's where the need was so great and the vulnerability so apparent. But she also knew that Lily needed consistency and support now more than ever. I'll be mindful of appropriate boundaries, she assured Melissa. But I won't disappear from her life without warning. She's had enough people do that already. Melissa seemed to accept this answer. I should get back to the office, file my reports. Will you be staying again tonight? Eleanor considered the question. She had been awake for nearly 36 hours now, with only brief dozes in the uncomfortable chair. Her back ached, and she needed a proper shower and change of clothes. But the thought of leaving Lily alone in the hospital, even with capable staff to care for her, felt wrong somehow. I'll stay until she wakes up, she decided. Make sure she's settled for the night. Then I'll go home for a few hours, shower and change, and come back in the morning before Claire returns. That sounds like a reasonable compromise, Melissa agreed. Take care of yourself too, Eleanor. Compassion fatigue is real, especially in cases like this. After Melissa left, Eleanor settled more comfortably in the chair, allowing herself to close her eyes for a moment. The events of the past 36 hours replayed in her mind. The initial red flags in the examination room, the mounting evidence, the moment of truth when Lily revealed her bruises, and the complex aftermath of that revelation. One quiet Tuesday morning had changed the course of Lily's life forever, setting in motion a chain of events that would eventually lead her to a new home in Edinburgh, away from the shadow of her father's abuse. And it had all hinged on small moments of attention and trust. Eleanor noticing the signs that others had missed, Dr. Bennett trusting her instincts, Lily finding the courage to show her injuries when given a moment of safety. Outside, the hospital continued its eternal rhythm of emergencies and routines, life and death, healing and pain. Inside room 217, a small girl slept peacefully for perhaps the first time in years, no longer carrying alone the weight of her terrible secret. Eleanor watched over her, guardian of this tentative peace, witness to the first fragile steps toward healing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more questions, difficult decisions, the continuing process of building trust with Claire and preparing for a future in Edinburgh. But for now, in this quiet moment between crisis and resolution, there was a kind of grace in the simple rise and fall of Lily's chest and the knowledge that she would wake to safety rather than fear. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Eleanor knew all too well that recovery from trauma followed no neat narrative arc, that healing was messy and nonlinear, that there would be setbacks alongside progress. But it was a beginning, and sometimes that was enough. As the hospital settled into evening routines around them, Eleanor allowed herself a small, private smile. For all the heartbreak of the past 2 days, there was also hope, embodied in Lily's cautious smile at her aunt's stories, in Claire's unwavering commitment to her niece, in the systems that had, for once, worked as they should to protect a vulnerable child. The road ahead would not be easy, but Lily Morgan would not walk it alone. And in the end, that might make all the difference in the world. The next morning brought a watery autumn sun breaking through Manchester's persistent clouds. Eleanor arrived at Mercy General just after 7, freshly showered and changed, carrying a small gift bag along with her usual work tote. She'd managed 6 hours of solid sleep in her own bed, a luxury after the chair-bound dozing of the previous 2 nights, and felt considerably more human for it. The night nurse on the pediatric ward, Fiona, greeted her with a knowing smile. "She's been asking for you since she woke up," she informed Eleanor in a low voice. "Wouldn't eat breakfast until we promised you were coming back." "How was the night?" Eleanor asked, concern creasing her brow. "2 nightmares," Fiona reported. "Around midnight and again at 4. Nothing too severe. She didn't scream, just woke up crying. Said she couldn't remember what they were about. But I have my suspicions." Eleanor nodded grimly. Traumatic stress had a way of surfacing during sleep, when the mind's carefully constructed defenses were at their weakest. "Any fever?" "Worsening of the respiratory symptoms. Temperature's normal, and the cough is definitely improving. Dr. Bennett's planning to review her this morning, but medically speaking, she's responding well to treatment." "Thanks, Fiona. I appreciate you looking after her." "Of course." Fiona's expression softened. "She's quite the little fighter, isn't she? So composed for her age." "Too composed, really." "A survival mechanism," Eleanor agreed. "When you live with unpredictable violence, hypervigilance becomes second nature." Fiona shook her head sadly. "Her aunt seems lovely, though. Rang the ward twice last night to check on her. Said she'd be in around 8 this morning." Armed with this information, Eleanor made her way to Lily's room. She knocked gently before entering, finding Lily sitting up in bed, a partially eaten toast triangle abandoned on her breakfast tray as she stared out the window. "Good morning," Eleanor greeted her warmly. "I heard you've been waiting for me." Lily's head whipped around, relief washing over her features. "You came back," she said, as if confirming a hypothesis she hadn't been entirely certain of. "I promised I would," Eleanor reminded her gently, settling into the now familiar chair. "I just went home for a shower and some sleep in a real bed. Hospital chairs aren't designed for overnight stays." Lily studied her with those perceptive eyes. "You look different. Not so tired." Eleanor smiled. "A good night's sleep works wonders. How about you?" "Nurse Fiona mentioned you had some troubled dreams." A small shrug. "I don't remember them." "Not really." The deflection was obvious, but Eleanor didn't push. "That happens sometimes," she said instead. "Oh, I brought you something." She held out the small gift bag. "Just a few things I thought might help pass the time while you're in hospital." Lily accepted the bag cautiously, as if unaccustomed to receiving presents. She opened it slowly, methodically, pulling out each item for careful inspection. A pack of colored pencils, a sketchbook, 2 paperback books suitable for her age, and a small, soft throw blanket in a gentle shade of green. "The hospital blankets can be a bit scratchy," Eleanor explained, "and I thought you might enjoy drawing, since your aunt mentioned you like art. The books are ones my niece enjoyed when she was about your age." Lily ran her fingers over the blanket's soft texture, then opened the sketchbook to its first blank page. "Thank you," she said, the words simple but sincere. "No one's given me new pencils since." She didn't finish the sentence, but Eleanor understood. Since her mother died. Since her father's abuse began. Since her world narrowed to mere survival. "You're very welcome," Eleanor said, keeping her tone light. "Your aunt mentioned she'll be here around 8. Dr. Bennett will check on you this morning as well, to see how the antibiotics are working." Lily nodded, still examining the colored pencils. "Will I have to talk to the police again today?" "I don't think so." Detective Wright seemed to get all the information she needed yesterday. There might be more questions later, but probably not today. This seemed to relieve Lily. She selected a blue pencil and began making tentative marks on the first page of the sketchbook. Not quite drawing yet, just testing. "What's going to happen to my dad?" The question, though anticipated, still gave Eleanor pause. She considered her answer carefully. The police are still questioning him. Based on the evidence and what you told Detective Wright, he'll likely face charges for what he did to you. Will he go to prison? Lily's voice remained neutral, her eyes fixed on the blue lines she was creating. Possibly, yes, but that decision will be made by the courts, and it will take some time. Lily continued her methodical pencil strokes, adding a darker blue to the pattern. If he goes to prison, where will he live after? When he gets out, I mean. The question revealed Lily's deeper concern. Not just the immediate consequences for her father, but the long-term implications for her own safety. It was a level of forward planning that no 8-year-old should need to consider. That's a long way off, Eleanor said gently. But there would be strict rules to keep you safe. He wouldn't be allowed to contact you or come near you. He's good at getting around rules, Lily observed, switching to a green pencil. He told my old school I was being homeschooled when they asked too many questions. And he made Dr. Levine think I was just clumsy when she saw bruises on my legs. The casual recitation of her father's manipulations was chilling in its matter-of-factness. Eleanor resisted the urge to gather Lily into a protective embrace, recognizing that physical boundaries were important for a child whose bodily autonomy had been so thoroughly violated. The rules after prison are different, she explained instead. There are serious consequences for breaking them, and you'll be living far away in Edinburgh, with people who will make sure you're protected. This seemed to partially satisfy Lily, who nodded and returned her focus to her drawing. What had started as abstract lines was taking the form of a landscape, rolling hills under a wide sky, simple but evocative. You draw beautifully, Eleanor observed. Mum taught me, Lily said, a soft note entering her voice at the mention of her mother. She said I had a good eye. Dad didn't like me drawing after she died. Said it was a waste of time. Eleanor felt a familiar surge of anger toward Richard Morgan, not just for the physical abuse, but for all the small joys and expressions he had systematically denied his daughter in his campaign of control. Well, your aunt is an illustrator, she reminded Lily. I imagine she'll be very supportive of your drawing. A small smile flickered across Lily's face, there and gone in an instant, but genuine. Maybe she could teach me more, like Mum was going to. The door opened then, and Dr. Bennett entered, clipboard in hand. Good morning, Lily. Nurse Eleanor. How are we feeling today? While Dr. Bennett conducted his examination, Eleanor stepped out briefly to check with the charge nurse about Lily's discharge timeline. The medical aspects of her care were progressing well. The antibiotics were effective against the pneumonia, and her fever had resolved. From a physical standpoint, she could likely be discharged within another day or two. The more complex question was where she would go. The temporary custody arrangements were still being processed, and Claire Nelson's home in Edinburgh had yet to receive final approval from social services. In the interim, Lily would need a safe place to stay, either remaining in the hospital or moving to emergency foster care. Eleanor was discussing these options with the charge nurse when Claire arrived, looking considerably more rested than the previous day, though still carrying the weight of concern in her eyes. How is she this morning? She asked immediately. Physically improving, Eleanor assured her. Dr. Bennett is with her now. She had some nightmares overnight, which is to be expected given everything that's happened, but otherwise she slept reasonably well. Claire nodded, absorbing this information. I spoke with Robert last night. He's managed to get time off work and will be driving down tomorrow. We've been thinking, if Lily can't come to Edinburgh right away, perhaps we could stay here in Manchester for a while? Rent a short-term flat or something. It seems cruel to put her with strangers when we're willing and able to care for her. That's definitely worth discussing with Melissa, Eleanor agreed. She should be here later this morning. I know everyone wants to minimize further disruption for Lily. They made their way back to Lily's room, finding Dr. Bennett completing his examination. Lily was sitting on the edge of the bed now, following his instructions to take deep breaths while he listened to her lungs. Much better, he announced, removing his stethoscope. The congestion is clearing nicely. One more day of IV antibiotics, I think. Then we can switch to oral medication. He turned, noticing Claire. Ah, Ms. Nelson. Good morning. I'm Dr. Bennett. After introductions and a brief medical update, Dr. Bennett excused himself to continue his rounds. Claire settled into the second visitor's chair, smiling warmly at her niece. "I see you've been drawing," she observed, noticing the sketchbook open on the bed. "May I look?" Lily hesitated briefly, then nodded, handing over her work in progress. Claire studied it with genuine interest, her professional eye evident in the way she assessed the composition. "This is really lovely, Lily. You have a wonderful sense of space and perspective for your age." The compliment brought a flush of pleasure to Lily's pale cheeks. "Nurse Eleanor brought me the pencils and sketchbook this morning." "That was thoughtful," Claire said, smiling at Eleanor. "Drawing always helps me when I'm feeling uncertain or overwhelmed. It's like creating a little world you can control when the big world feels too chaotic." The observation seemed to resonate with Lily, who nodded thoughtfully. "That's what Mum used to say too, that art was a way to make sense of things." "She was absolutely right," Claire affirmed, returning the sketchbook. "Your mother was very talented. I have some of her paintings at home in Edinburgh. She gave them to me before." Claire's voice caught slightly. "Before she got sick." Lily's expression brightened with interest. "You have Mum's paintings? Can I see them?" "Of course. They're hanging in our living room. I kept them for you, actually. I always hoped you'd be able to come and see them someday." The conversation drifted naturally to memories of Jennifer Morgan, Claire sharing gentle stories of their childhood, and the sisters' shared love of art. Watching them, Eleanor was struck by the physical resemblance between aunt and niece. Not just the same blue eyes, but certain expressions and gestures that suggested shared DNA. More importantly, she observed how Lily gradually relaxed in Claire's presence, the wariness that had characterized their initial reunion softening into something approaching comfort. When Claire produced a book she had illustrated, a whimsical tale about a cat's secret life, Lily's interest was genuine, her questions about the drawing technique specific and engaged. Eleanor quietly excused herself, giving aunt and niece privacy for their reconnection. In the corridor, she encountered Melissa Jones arriving with a portfolio of documents under her arm. "Good morning," the social worker greeted her. "How's everything today?" Eleanor updated her on Lily's medical progress and the developing rapport with Claire. "They seem to be building a real connection," she concluded. Claire mentioned that she and her husband might stay in Manchester temporarily if Lily can't go to Edinburgh right away. "I was coming to discuss exactly that," Melissa confirmed. "I've spoken with my counterparts in Edinburgh. The home study is scheduled for today, and if all goes well, we could have preliminary approval by tomorrow. However, there are still legal hurdles with the cross-jurisdictional aspects. What's the best-case scenario? Best case? We get emergency kinship approval for Claire and Robert by the weekend, and Lily could be discharged directly into their care. They'd need to remain in England temporarily until the full custody hearing, but that's certainly better than emergency foster placement." Eleanor felt a wave of relief. That would be ideal. Lily's been through enough transitions already. "Agreed. I'll need to speak with Claire about the details. And I should update Lily as well. She deserves to know what's happening, in age-appropriate terms." Together, they returned to Lily's room, where Claire was in the middle of demonstrating a shading technique on a blank page of the sketchbook. Both looked up as the door opened. "Ms. Jones," Lily greeted the social worker, her tone carefully neutral. Eleanor recognized it as the voice Lily used when assessing new situations for potential threat. "Good morning, Lily," Melissa replied warmly. "You're looking much better today. How are you feeling?" "Better," Lily confirmed. "Dr. Bennett says the medicine is working. That's excellent news. I was hoping to talk with you and your aunt about what happens next. If that's all right." Lily nodded, setting aside the sketchbook. Eleanor noted how her posture straightened, bracing herself for whatever information might come. "I've been speaking with the social services team in Edinburgh," Melissa began, taking the chair Eleanor had vacated. "They're visiting your aunt and uncle's home today to make sure it's suitable for a child to live there. That's standard procedure when we're arranging for children to stay with relatives." "It's definitely suitable," Claire interjected with a small smile. We've been prepared for this possibility ever since. She glanced at Lily, modifying her words. For quite some time. Assuming their report is positive, which I expect it will be, we still need to get court approval for you to leave Manchester. Melissa continued, addressing Lily directly. That might take a few more days. In the meantime, we have a decision to make about where you'll stay once the hospital discharges you. Lily's eyes darted to Eleanor, then back to Melissa. Can't I stay with Aunt Claire? That's what we're hoping to arrange, Melissa confirmed. Your aunt and uncle are willing to stay in Manchester temporarily until all the paperwork is finalized. But we need to make sure we're following all the proper procedures. Lily seemed to absorb this cautiously. So I wouldn't have to go somewhere else first? With strangers. That's what we're trying to avoid, Melissa assured her. I know change is very difficult, especially after everything you've been through. We want to keep things as stable as possible for you. For the first time, Eleanor saw genuine relief cross Lily's features. When can I leave the hospital? Dr. Bennett thinks tomorrow or the day after, Eleanor supplied. He wants to make sure the pneumonia is properly under control first. Claire leaned forward, addressing Melissa. Robert will be here tomorrow. We can start looking for short-term accommodation right away. Something nearby, so Lily can continue to see Dr. Bennett for follow-up care. That sounds like an excellent plan, Melissa agreed. I have some forms for you to complete, preliminary kinship care assessments, and we'll need to arrange a brief interview with both you and Robert once he arrives. As the adults discussed logistics, Eleanor noticed Lily watching them intently, tracking the conversation with that characteristic hypervigilance. Catching her eye, Eleanor offered a reassuring smile. It's a lot of grown-up talk, isn't it? She said softly. But the important part is that people are working hard to make sure you stay with your aunt and uncle. Lily nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. I like Aunt Claire, she confided in a near whisper. She's kind, like Mum was. The simple statement, delivered with a child's directness, confirmed what Eleanor had observed, the tentative foundation of trust being established between Lily and her aunt. The morning progressed with a steady flow of activity. Eleanor was officially on duty now, attending to her other patients while checking in regularly with Lily. Claire remained at her niece's side, the two continuing to bond over shared artistic interests and gentle reminiscences about Lily's mother. Shortly before noon, Detective Wright arrived for a brief update. Eleanor was changing the IV bag in Lily's room when the detective appeared, her presence immediately causing Lily to stiffen. Hello, Lily. Detective Wright greeted her warmly. Don't worry, I'm not here to ask more questions. I just wanted to let you know how things are progressing. With Claire's permission, the detective shared a simplified version of developments. Richard Morgan had finally broken down under questioning late the previous night, admitting to disciplining Lily in ways that might have been excessive. While falling short of a full confession, his partial admissions, combined with the medical evidence and Lily's testimony, had been sufficient for the Crown Prosecution Service to approve charges. He's being formally charged today, Detective Wright explained. The magistrate will decide whether to grant bail or keep him in custody until the trial. Will he be allowed to come find me? Lily asked, the question direct as always. Absolutely not, Detective Wright assured her firmly. If he's granted bail, which is unlikely given the circumstances, there would be strict conditions. He would not be allowed to contact you or come anywhere near you, and we would make sure you and your family are informed of all developments. Lily seemed to process this, her expression guarded. What if he breaks the rules? Then he would be immediately arrested and held in custody, the detective explained. But I want you to know that we're doing everything possible to make sure he remains in custody until the trial. The evidence against him is very strong. After Detective Wright departed, Lily was quieter, picking at her lunch without much enthusiasm. Eleanor, checking her vital signs, noted the slight increase in heart rate and respiratory rate, physical signs of anxiety despite the girl's composed exterior. Would it help to talk about what you're feeling? Eleanor asked gently, sitting beside the bed. Lily shrugged, pushing the food around her plate. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel, she admitted. He hurt me a lot. But he's still your dad, Eleanor finished softly when Lily trailed off. The girl nodded, relief evident that Eleanor understood the complicated emotions she couldn't fully articulate. Is that wrong? To still care what happens to him? Not at all, Eleanor assured her. Feelings are never wrong, Lily. They're just feelings. And the relationships we have with our parents are complex, even in the best of circumstances. Claire, who had stepped out briefly to take a call, returned to find Lily deep in conversation with Eleanor. She paused in the doorway, not wanting to interrupt what seemed like an important exchange. The detective said he admitted it. Lily was saying, her voice small but steady, that he hurt me. Do you think that means he's sorry? Eleanor chose her words with care. I don't know, sweetheart. People admit things for many reasons. Sometimes out of genuine remorse, sometimes because they have no other choice. He used to say sorry sometimes, when it was really bad. Lily's fingers traced patterns on the blanket Eleanor had brought her. He'd cry and promise it wouldn't happen again. But it always did. The matter-of-fact description of the classic abuse cycle, violence followed by remorse, followed inevitably by more violence, broke Eleanor's heart. She was acutely aware of Claire standing silently in the doorway, bearing witness to the painful reality of what her niece had endured. That pattern is very common in situations like yours, Eleanor explained gently. The problem wasn't that your father couldn't control his anger. It was that he chose not to, even after seeing how much it hurt you. Lily considered this, her young face solemn with understanding beyond her years. So even if he's sorry now, it doesn't mean he wouldn't do it again. That's right, Eleanor confirmed. Which is why the most important thing is keeping you safe, regardless of how he feels or what he says. Claire chose this moment to make her presence known, stepping fully into the room. If she was shaken by what she'd overheard, she masked it well, offering Lily a warm smile. I just spoke with Uncle Robert, she announced. He's already on his way and should arrive early tomorrow morning. He's very excited to see you. Lily straightened slightly, distracted from the heavy conversation. Is he bringing Pickle? She asked, remembering the cat from Claire's photos. Claire laughed, the sound brightening the room. No, Pickle stays with our neighbor when we're away. She spoils him terribly with treats. But I've told Robert to bring some recent pictures to show you. The afternoon passed more quietly. Lily napped for a while, the emotional and physical demands of the past days catching up with her. Claire used the time to view several short-term rental options on her laptop, occasionally consulting with Eleanor about proximity to the hospital and safety of various neighborhoods. When Lily woke, she was initially disoriented, a flash of panic crossing her face before she registered Claire's presence. For a minute, I thought I was back home, she admitted, the words barely audible. You're safe at the hospital, Claire reminded her gently. And soon you'll be with Robert and me. Lily nodded, visibly calming herself. What time is it? Nearly 4 o'clock. You had a good long nap. Where's Nurse Eleanor? She had other patients to see, but she said she'd check in before her shift ends. Lily seemed to accept this, reaching for her sketchbook. Will you show me more shading techniques? The simple request, and the art session that followed, created a pocket of normalcy in what had been an extraordinarily abnormal few days. Eleanor, completing her rounds, paused outside Lily's room, watching through the window as aunt and niece bent over the sketchbook together, Claire guiding Lily's hand to create subtle gradations of shadow and light. It was a snapshot of what Lily's life might have been without Richard's abuse, and what it might still become, Eleanor realized. The potential for healing, for joy, for ordinary moments of connection remained, despite everything. Children were remarkably resilient when given the right support and safety. As promised, Eleanor stopped by before the end of her shift. I'll be back in the morning, she assured Lily. Dr. Bennett will probably make the final decision about discharge then. Will you come with us? Lily asked suddenly. When I leave, to the place where we'll stay. The question caught Eleanor off guard. She glanced at Claire, who nodded slightly, indicating her approval. If you'd like me to, yes, Eleanor agreed. I can help get you settled. This seemed to satisfy Lily, who returned to her drawing with renewed focus. As Eleanor prepared to leave, Claire followed her into the hallway. Thank you, she said simply, for everything you've done for her. The way you connect with her, understand her. It's remarkable. Eleanor shook her head modestly. She makes it easy. She's an extraordinary child. Yes, she is, Claire agreed, glancing back through the window at her niece. I keep thinking about what I overheard earlier about Richard's patterns of abuse. It's so hard to reconcile with the man my sister married. The man who seemed to adore Lily when she was younger. Grief can transform people, Eleanor said carefully. Not that it excuses anything he did. Of course not, Claire agreed quickly. Nothing could excuse it. She trailed off, struggling to articulate her thoughts. I wish we had known. Done something sooner. You tried, Eleanor reminded her. From what you've said, you made multiple attempts to maintain contact, even reported your concerns to social services. Richard was very deliberate in his isolation tactics. Claire nodded, though the guilt in her eyes remained. The important thing now is helping Lily heal. It won't be quick or easy, I know that. But we're committed to whatever she needs, for as long as she needs it. Eleanor had no doubt of that commitment. In just 2 days, she had observed Claire's unwavering patience, her genuine interest in reconnecting with Lily, her willingness to adapt her expectations to the girl's emotional state. She's lucky to have you, Eleanor said sincerely. Both of you. The foundation of trust you're building now will make all the difference in her recovery. After saying her goodbyes, Eleanor completed her shift documentation and prepared to leave the hospital. As she crossed the parking lot to her car, the events of the day, detective Wright's update, Lily's conflicted feelings about her father, the growing bond between aunt and niece, settled into perspective. The road ahead would not be smooth. There would be legal proceedings, custody hearings, potentially traumatic testimony. Lily would need specialized therapy to address the complex psychological impacts of the abuse. Claire and Robert would face the challenges of parenting a traumatized child, navigating the delicate balance between structure and flexibility, protection and independence. But for the first time since discovering Lily's bruises, Eleanor felt genuinely hopeful about the girl's future. The systems designed to protect children were, in this case at least, functioning as they should. Lily had family who genuinely wanted her and were prepared to support her healing. The worst was over. The secret revealed, the abuse stopped, the perpetrator facing consequences. As she drove home through Manchester's evening traffic, Eleanor allowed herself to envision Lily months from now, perhaps a year, settled in Edinburgh, attending a new school, continuing her art with Claire's guidance. The image brought her comfort, a reminder that even in the darkest circumstances, paths to healing could be found. The following morning, Eleanor arrived at the hospital to find a tall, bearded man in conversation with Claire outside Lily's room. She recognized him immediately from Claire's photos. Robert Nelson, Lily's uncle, his kind face animated as he spoke with his wife. "You must be Nurse Palmer," he said as Eleanor approached, extending a hand. His Scottish accent was more pronounced than Claire's, his handshake warm and firm. "Claire's told me so much about everything you've done for Lily. I can't thank you enough." "Please call me Eleanor," she replied, immediately liking his straightforward manner. "And I was just doing my job. How was your drive down?" "Long but uneventful. Left Edinburgh at 4 this morning to beat the worst of the traffic." He glanced toward Lily's room. "How is she today?" "I've just arrived myself, but the night nurse reported she slept better. Only one nightmare, and she went back to sleep quite quickly afterward." Claire smiled, clearly relieved. "She seems brighter this morning. Having Robert here has given her something new to focus on, I think." "Has she met him yet?" "Briefly, yes. She was a bit shy at first, but Robert showed her pictures of Pickle doing ridiculous things, which broke the ice somewhat." "Cat videos and photos," Robert said with a grin. "Universal language of friendship." Eleanor smiled, appreciating his gentle humor. Dr. Bennett should be making rounds soon. He'll make the final decision about discharge, but based on yesterday's assessment, I expect he'll approve it for tomorrow. We found a short-term rental, Claire informed her. A furnished flat not far from here. 3 months minimum lease, but that should give us plenty of time for the legal process to work through. We can move in tomorrow if Lily's discharged. That's excellent news, Eleanor said. Have you heard anything from the Edinburgh Social Services yet? They completed the home visit yesterday, Robert reported. Said everything looked in order. We're just waiting for the official report, but our social worker there seemed very positive about the assessment. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Bennett, clipboard in hand as always. After introductions and a brief discussion in the hallway, they all entered Lily's room together. Lily was sitting up in bed, the sketchbook open beside her. She looked up as they entered, her eyes immediately seeking Eleanor's. "Good morning," Eleanor greeted her warmly. "You've met your Uncle Robert, I see." Lily nodded, her gaze assessing the tall Scotsman with cautious interest. "He showed me pictures of Pickle trying to fit in a shoebox. One of his many talents," Robert affirmed with a gentle smile, "along with unraveling entire rolls of toilet paper when we're not looking." This earned the ghost of a smile from Lily, her reserve softening slightly. Dr. Bennett proceeded with his examination, his manner as always direct but kind. He listened to Lily's lungs, checked her temperature and other vital signs, and reviewed her latest blood work results. "The infection is responding very well to treatment," he concluded. "I'm pleased with your progress, Lily. I think we can plan for discharge tomorrow, with oral antibiotics to continue at home." "So I can leave tomorrow?" Lily clarified, seeking confirmation. "That's right," Dr. Bennett confirmed, "assuming everything remains stable today." Lily's relief was palpable, though tempered with visible anxiety about what would come next. "Where will we go?" she asked, looking between Claire and Robert. "We found a nice flat not far from here," Claire explained. "It's just temporary. A place for us to stay while the legal arrangements are sorted out. Eventually, we'll all go back to Edinburgh together." "How long will that take?" "Going to Edinburgh? We don't know exactly," Robert answered honestly. "The social workers and legal people need to do their jobs properly to make sure everything's handled correctly. But we're thinking a few weeks, possibly a month or two." Lily seemed to process this timeline, mentally preparing herself for the transition ahead. "Will I have my own room? In the flat?" "Absolutely," Claire assured her. "It has 2 bedrooms, and we can get whatever you need to make it comfortable." "What about my things? From home?" The question created a momentary hesitation among the adults. Lily's belongings remained at the house she had shared with Richard, a place now potentially part of a crime scene, and certainly a location loaded with difficult memories. "We've been coordinating with the police about that," Melissa Jones said, entering the room in time to hear Lily's question. "They've agreed to allow us to collect your essential items today, if you'd like. You can make a list of what's most important to you." Lily considered this. "My rabbit," she said immediately, repeating the treasured item she had mentioned previously. "And my books. And—" she trailed off, looking suddenly uncertain. "What is it, Lily?" Eleanor prompted gently. "My box," Lily said in a near whisper. "The blue one under my bed. But Dad might have found it and taken it away." Eleanor exchanged glances with Melissa, both remembering Lily's previous mention of this hidden container that held both mementos and potential evidence. "We'll look for it," Melissa promised. "Is there anything else you want from your room?" Lily listed a few more items: specific clothing, a solar system model that hung from her ceiling, a growth chart her mother had marked on her bedroom door. As she spoke, Eleanor noticed how she referred to my room rather than home, a subtle but significant linguistic distinction that suggested she had already begun the psychological separation from the house where she had suffered. "I can go with Melissa to collect these things today," Claire offered. "That way we'll have everything ready for when you're discharged tomorrow." Lily nodded agreement, though a shadow crossed her face. "Will you have to see my dad? At the house?" "No," Melissa assured her quickly. Your father is still in police custody. The house will be empty except for the police officer who will accompany us. This seemed to relieve Lily considerably. For all her extraordinary composure, the thought of her father clearly still triggered significant anxiety. As the morning progressed, Eleanor attended to her other patients while keeping a close eye on Lily's room. Through the window, she observed the developing family dynamic, Claire's gentle nurturing, Robert's quiet solidity, and Lily's cautious but increasing comfort with both of them. Robert had brought a chess set and was patiently teaching Lily the basic moves, his large hands moving the pieces with surprising delicacy as Lily watched with intense concentration. It was around midday when Detective Wright returned, her expression more serious than during her previous visit. She requested to speak with the adults privately, prompting Eleanor to engage Lily in a distraction technique she had learned in pediatric training. Have you ever built a fort with hospital blankets? She asked, producing extra linens from the supply closet. It's practically a required activity when you're stuck in bed. While Lily was occupied with the impromptu construction project, the adults gathered in a small conference room down the hall. Detective Wright wasted no time with preliminaries. The magistrate made a decision this morning regarding Richard Morgan's custody status. She informed them. Despite our objections, he's been granted bail with conditions. Eleanor felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. What conditions? No contact with Lily, obviously. Surrender of his passport. Daily reporting to the police station. An exclusion zone keeping him away from this hospital and from his former home, where we assumed Lily might return. But we found alternative accommodation, Claire protested, distress evident in her voice. He doesn't know where we'll be staying. Which is good, Detective Wright confirmed. We strongly advise keeping that information confidential. Our primary concern is that Morgan has significant financial resources and community connections. Despite the evidence against him, he's maintained a public position that this is all a misunderstanding. Has he made any specific threats? Robert asked, his arm protectively around Claire's shoulders. Not explicitly, no. But his behavior during questioning suggests he believes he can still control the narrative, and by extension, control Lily. Our psychological assessment indicates he's unlikely to simply accept the loss of that control. The implication hung heavy in the air. Richard Morgan might attempt to contact Lily, or worse, try to take her away. We've already arranged for additional patrols in the area where you'll be staying, Detective Wright continued, and I would suggest a few additional precautions. Keep Lily's whereabouts off social media. Inform her new school, once that's arranged, of the situation and the restricted contact list. Consider changing your phone numbers temporarily. Do we need to tell Lily about this? Claire asked, her voice strained. She's just starting to feel safe. Detective Wright considered the question carefully. I think some age-appropriate information would be wise. Children who've experienced trauma often have heightened anxiety about the unknown. Concrete facts, presented calmly, can be less frightening than vague worries or overheard conversations. She should be prepared, not frightened, Eleanor agreed. Lily's remarkably perceptive. If we're all suddenly implementing security measures without explanation, she'll notice and likely imagine scenarios far worse than the reality. Robert nodded grimly. Better she knows we're taking specific precautions than wonder why we're acting strangely. With that difficult decision made, they discussed practical security arrangements, restricted visitor access during Lily's remaining hospital stay, protocols for discharge tomorrow, and safety measures for the temporary flat. We should also consider her psychological safety, Eleanor suggested. Lily's just beginning to process what happened. Knowing her father is no longer in custody could trigger significant anxiety. I've arranged for her to meet with Dr. Helen Parker tomorrow, Melissa interjected. She's a child psychologist who specializes in trauma. The initial session is primarily to establish rapport before Lily leaves the hospital, but Dr. Parker can also help address any immediate concerns about her father's status. The meeting concluded with Detective Wright promising to provide regular updates and immediate notification of any concerning developments. As they prepared to return to Lily's room, Eleanor felt the weight of this new complication. Just when the path forward had seemed to be clearing, this shadow had fallen across it. Back in Lily's room, they found an elaborate blanket fort constructed over the hospital bed, with Lily sitting cross-legged inside, looking more like a typical 8-year-old than Eleanor had yet seen her. "I see architecture may be another talent of yours," Robert commented admiringly, stooping to peer into the fort's entrance. "Excellent structural integrity." Lily allowed a small smile at the compliment. "Nurse Eleanor showed me how to use the chairs to hold up the corners." "May we join you?" Claire asked. "It looks quite cozy in there." After a moment's hesitation, Lily nodded, shifting to make room. It was a tight fit with all 4 adults and Lily inside the improvised structure. But there was something symbolic about gathering in this child-created space for the difficult conversation ahead. "Lily," Melissa began gently, "we have some information to share with you about your father." The girl's expression immediately became guarded, her body tensing visibly. "What about him?" "The judge decided today that he can leave the police station while he waits for his trial," Melissa explained, using straightforward, age-appropriate language. "He has many rules he has to follow, including staying away from you and this hospital." Lily absorbed this information with a stillness that spoke volumes about her inner turmoil. "So he's not in jail anymore?" she finally asked, her voice small but steady. "He was in police custody, not jail," Detective Wright clarified. "And now he's been released with strict conditions. It's different from being completely free. He has to report to the police station every day, and he's not allowed to leave Manchester or contact you in any way." "But he could try to find me," Lily said. Not a question but a statement of fact, revealing her immediate grasp of the situation's implications. The adults exchanged glances, recognizing that pretending otherwise would only undermine Lily's trust. "He could try," Detective Wright acknowledged, "but we're taking extra steps to make sure that doesn't happen. And if he breaks any of the rules, he'll be arrested immediately." "We want you to know about this," Claire added, reaching out to take Lily's hand, "because we believe in being honest with you. But we also want you to know that keeping you safe is our absolute top priority. Your aunt and uncle have found a place to stay that your father doesn't know about," Eleanor explained, "and there will be police officers checking the area regularly." Lily's gaze moved from face to face, assessing the sincerity of their assurances. "What if he comes anyway? Then he'll be breaking the law, and the police will arrest him," Robert said firmly. "And I'll be there with you and Aunt Claire. I may be a teacher, but I'm rather large, as you can see." He smiled gently, attempting to reassure without frightening. Lily considered this. "Do you think he'll try to take me back?" The directness of the question created a momentary pause. It was Eleanor who finally answered, recognizing that Lily needed honesty more than comfort. "We don't know, sweetheart, but we're preparing as if he might, so that you'll be protected no matter what." This seemed to satisfy Lily more than false reassurances would have. She nodded thoughtfully. "That's what Mum used to say, hope for the best but prepare for the worst." The echo of her mother's wisdom in her child's voice was poignant. "Your mother was very wise," Claire said softly, squeezing Lily's hand. "And you're very brave, but you don't have to be brave all the time. It's okay to be worried or scared." "I am scared," Lily admitted, the simple confession revealing the trust she was beginning to place in these adults. "But not as much as before. Before I was all alone with it." The profound truth in those words brought tears to Claire's eyes, though she blinked them back quickly. "You're not alone anymore," she promised, "and you never will be again." The conversation shifted then to practical matters: what would happen tomorrow when Lily was discharged, where they would go, how the temporary flat was arranged. Throughout, Eleanor observed how the adults worked together to create a framework of predictability for Lily, understanding instinctively that knowing what to expect would help manage her anxiety. As the makeshift family conference in the blanket fort concluded, Eleanor noted the subtle changes in Lily's demeanor. There was fear, yes. The news about her father's bail status had shaken her. But there was also a new resolve, a cautious confidence in the support system surrounding her. The girl who had endured years of isolation and abuse was beginning to trust in the possibility of protection and care. Later that afternoon, while Robert and Claire stepped out to sign the lease on the temporary flat, Eleanor sat with Lily, helping her create a list of questions for Dr. Parker, the psychologist she would meet tomorrow. "She sounds scary," Lily confessed, nibbling on her lower lip. "Will she make me talk about all the bad stuff again?" "Not right away," Eleanor assured her. "This first meeting is mostly for you two to get to know each other. Dr. Parker's job is to help you make sense of your feelings and find ways to feel better when you're scared or sad or angry. Like drawing helps?" "Exactly like that. She might suggest other things too. Special kinds of play or stories, or exercises to help when you feel overwhelmed." Lily considered this, adding another question to their list. "Will you come with me?" "When I talk to her." "For this first meeting, yes, if you'd like me to," Eleanor agreed. "Later, as you get more comfortable with Dr. Parker, you might prefer to speak with her privately. But that's entirely up to you." The hospital dinner arrived, a tray of food that Lily approached with more appetite than she had shown previously. As she ate, she shared her conversation with her uncle about chess. "He says it's a game about thinking ahead," she reported. "Planning moves and seeing what might happen. I'm not very good at it yet, but he says that's because I'm just learning." "Chess is a complex game," Eleanor agreed. "It takes time to master." "Dad never let me play games like that," Lily said matter-of-factly. "He said they were a waste of time that could be spent studying." Another small revelation about Richard's controlling behavior, delivered without drama but painting a clearer picture of Lily's restricted existence. Eleanor wondered how many simple childhood pleasures had been denied in Richard's campaign to isolate and dominate his daughter. "Well, now you can learn all sorts of games," she said instead of voicing her anger. "Your Uncle Robert seems like he'd be a patient teacher." "He is," Lily confirmed. "He didn't get mad when I made mistakes. He just showed me again." The contrast between this gentle guidance and Richard's punishing approach was striking, and Eleanor hoped that such positive experiences would gradually help Lily redefine her expectations of adult behavior. As evening approached, Claire and Robert returned, bringing news that the flat was ready for occupation tomorrow. They had purchased some basic supplies, food, toiletries, a few items to make Lily's room more welcoming. "And we stopped by your house with Miss Jones," Claire added, setting a small duffel bag on the end of Lily's bed. "We found some of the things on your list." Lily sat up straighter, her attention fixed on the bag. "Did you find my rabbit? And the blue box?" "Yes to both," Claire confirmed with a smile. "The box is in here and so is your rabbit, though he looks like he could use a gentle wash." With careful movements, Lily unzipped the bag, reaching inside to pull out a well-loved stuffed rabbit. Its once white fur now grayish with age and handling, one ear slightly flattened, button eyes scratched but intact. The care with which she held it spoke volumes about its importance to her. "This was from Mum," she explained, seeing Eleanor's interested gaze. "She gave him to me when I was little. His name is Carrots." "He looks like a very good friend," Eleanor observed, recognizing the significance of this connection to Lily's mother. Next from the bag came a blue metal box, once possibly a biscuit tin, now transformed into a personal treasure chest. Lily set it aside without opening it, suggesting its contents were private. "We also found some of your books, clothes, and that solar system model you mentioned," Claire continued. "The growth chart was a bit trickier. It's painted directly on the doorframe, but Robert took photos of it, and we thought perhaps we could recreate it in our home in Edinburgh." The thoughtfulness of this gesture, preserving this tangible record of Lily's physical growth that her mother had lovingly maintained, brought a rare, genuine smile to the girl's face. "Really? You do that?" "Of course," Robert assured her. "It's part of your history, important to keep." As they continued unpacking the duffel bag, discussing each recovered item, Eleanor observed the tableau with a sense of cautious optimism. Despite the complication of Richard's bail status, despite the uncertain road ahead, something profound was happening here. The formation of a new family unit, built not on blood ties alone but on compassion, commitment, and growing trust. The final item from the bag was a framed photograph that caused Lily to go very still. It showed a younger, healthier Lily with a woman whose resemblance to Claire was unmistakable, Jennifer Morgan. Her arm around her daughter, both smiling at the camera against a backdrop of autumn trees. "We found it in your bedside drawer," Claire said softly. "I hope it was okay to bring it. Dad put all the pictures of Mum away after she died," Lily whispered, tracing her mother's face with a gentle finger. "He said it made him too sad to see them. I found this one in a box in the attic and kept it hidden." The quiet revelation explained another piece of Richard's methodical erasure of Jennifer's presence. Another way he had isolated Lily from connections and memories that might have sustained her. Yet she had resisted in her own small way, preserving this tangible link to her mother despite the risks. "Perhaps we could find a special place for it in your new room," Robert suggested. "And when we go to Edinburgh, Claire has more photos of your mum that we can share with you." Lily nodded, still gazing at the photograph. "I'd like that," she said simply. As evening settled over the hospital, various members of the impromptu support team gradually departed. Melissa to file her reports, Detective Wright to coordinate security arrangements for tomorrow's discharge, Robert and Claire to spend the night at a nearby hotel after promising to return first thing in the morning. Left alone with Lily, Eleanor helped her prepare for sleep, administering the evening dose of antibiotics and arranging the blankets comfortably. The stuffed rabbit now had a place of honor beside Lily's pillow, its worn presence a small comfort in the institutional setting. "Big day tomorrow," Eleanor observed, dimming the lights to their nighttime setting. "How are you feeling about everything?" Lily considered the question with her characteristic thoughtfulness. "Scared about Dad," she finally admitted, "but happy about Aunt Claire and Uncle Robert." "That makes perfect sense," Eleanor assured her. "It's possible to feel different emotions at the same time, even ones that seem opposite. Will you really come with us tomorrow? To the new flat?" "I will," Eleanor confirmed. "I've arranged to take a few hours off after my morning rounds. I want to make sure you're comfortably settled." This promise seemed to ease some of Lily's tension. She pulled the soft green blanket Eleanor had given her closer, its texture now a familiar comfort. "When I go to Edinburgh," she said after a moment, "will I ever see you again?" The question caught Eleanor off guard with its directness, though she realized she should have anticipated it. In just a few intense days, she had become a significant figure in Lily's life, perhaps the first adult who had truly seen her pain and acted decisively to end it. "I hope so," she answered honestly. "We could write letters or have video calls, and perhaps someday I could visit Edinburgh. I've never been, and I hear it's beautiful." "It has a castle right in the middle of the city," Lily informed her, clearly recalling something Claire or Robert had mentioned. "And lots of old buildings. And hills." "Sounds wonderful," Eleanor said, smiling at this small glimpse of childlike enthusiasm. "Now try to get some sleep. Tomorrow's a big day." As Lily settled deeper under the blankets, carrots tucked securely against her side, Eleanor prepared to leave for the night. She had officially been off duty for hours now, but had stayed to help with the transition after the news about Richard's bail status. "Nurse Eleanor?" Lily's voice came softly from the dim room. "Thank you for noticing. About the bruises and everything." The simple gratitude encompassed so much. For seeing what others had missed, for believing Lily's truth, for setting in motion the chain of events that had led to her rescue. Eleanor felt her throat tighten with emotion. "You're the brave one," she replied. "You showed me the bruises. You trusted me enough to tell the truth. That took incredible courage." Lily seemed to consider this alternative perspective. "Maybe we were both brave," she suggested sleepily. "Yes," Eleanor agreed softly. "Maybe we were." She waited until Lily's breathing deepened into sleep before quietly leaving the room, nodding to the security officer now stationed in the corridor. One of the precautions implemented following the news of Richard's release. As she walked through the quiet hospital corridors toward the exit, Eleanor reflected on the remarkable unfolding of the past 3 days. What had begun as subtle concern during a routine examination had cascaded into a complete transformation of Lily's life trajectory. from abuse and isolation toward safety and connection. The road ahead would not be easy, but the foundation had been laid for something that had seemed impossible just days ago. Hope. Outside, the autumn night was cool and clear, stars visible between gaps in Manchester's ever-present cloud cover. Eleanor breathed deeply, letting the fresh air clear the antiseptic hospital smell from her lungs. Tomorrow would bring discharge paperwork, the move to the temporary flat, Lily's first meeting with Dr. Parker, and all the complex emotions those transitions would entail. But tonight, Lily Morgan slept peacefully with her mother's rabbit beside her and her aunt and uncle preparing a safe place for her. The secret was out, the truth acknowledged, the healing begun. For now, that was enough. As Eleanor walked to her car, she found herself thinking of a line from a poem she had studied years ago. Hope is the thing with feathers. For Lily, perhaps hope had taken a different form. Not feathers, but the worn fur of a stuffed rabbit named Carrots. The gentle guidance of an aunt's hand showing her how to create shadows and light. The steady presence of adults who saw her pain and vowed to end it. Small things, perhaps, in the greater scheme of the world's sorrows. But for one brave little girl, they might make all the difference.